Good morning and welcome to Beyond the Lines podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Watson, on this mid-December, dark, dreary, wonderful Wednesday. So welcome. So let's just see if we can get less dark and dreary here. You know, this is a high budget project that we have going on here. Here we go. Perfect. Okay, great. So welcome. We don't have the Christmas tree today. I think I wanted to send it back into the shop, get a little revamped a little bit before I brought it back out here again. Thank you everybody for coming. Looks like we have some comments already. Hopefully they are able to be managed. I just want to start by giving a shout out to Tim Kirby for coming on Beyond the Lines podcast and chatting with me last week. I loved it. It was wonderful. I really appreciate it. I love his insights. I love his vibe. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And you can check out the replay by clicking on one of the links or whatever with the channel. So today, so much going on that I thought we could, watch some of our dear professor, the wonderful Facebook's favorite historian, number one, what would you call it? Number one as far as subscribers on Substack. Okay, the copy and paste queen herself, Heather Cox Richardson, your favorite and mine. So let's go to her Facebook page where she does a lot of her videos and promotion. I think she has something going on because Facebook, ever since Trump won, she's been moving away from Facebook a little bit and moving towards YouTube. She's definitely moved away from X and definitely gone to Blue Sky for her postings. But so YouTube is where she is focusing. You know, her and her team are focusing there, and but also Facebook. So her old videos are not on Facebook. So if you want to see some of her old videos, you can go to YouTube. I generally catch her on Facebook. I couldn't find this video that she recorded last Saturday with her co-host, another historian, Joanne. I couldn't find it on YouTube, actually, just looking at it briefly. So I had to go to Facebook. So we're going to go to Facebook to watch the video. You know, and then we may get into like a little bit of Brian Berletic. Who knows? We'll see. Maybe we'll just watch a little bit of it in the beginning, just a little bit. It's very hard to watch. It's really hard to watch. So I don't want to watch it twice. So if we're going to watch it, it's going to be together. So thanks for hanging in with me. It's tough work. It really is, guys. It really is. I'll be honest. It's really, it's up here, you know, like this, right? Some of this right here, you know, it's a little draining. Okay. Interesting. So, and also some of the stuff that we talk about here is the media ecosystem, right? We talk about the different content creators, people that call themselves analysts. So this isn't just a criticism of the content. It is a criticism of the content, but it's not just the criticism of the content, right? We're also talking about some just human observations about people, about what motivates people, drives people, what do people like? You know, this is marketing as well. So here we go. Bear with me. You know, I had somebody in the comments at one point say, too much clickety clickety or too much clickety clack, because you can hear it on my computer. So just bear with me. Bear with me as we go on our screen sharing journey. You hear the clickety clack? Yeah, this is fairly straightforward. So we're just going to watch this. So if you're new to the show, welcome. All of our old episodes are mainly on Rumble because we just started streaming to YouTube about I think it was 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. We just started streaming to YouTube. So all of the old videos are on Rumble. You can check them out there. It's quite a loud clickety clack. Yes, it is. I agree. When I listened back to it, I agree. We may have to change the show to the clickety clack show. I don't know. That might be the subtitle, you know? So I don't know. Okay, so again, if you're new to the show, what we're going to do is we're going to screen share. We're going to listen to what they're saying, and then we're going to pause, and we're going to do some commentary. There might be some jokes, bad ones, of course, generally. But you let me know. It is, yeah, the clickety clack. It's great.
And you have done this. You have done this. It's no matter what I do or say, if it's on social media, someone's like, "Have you gotten back from your run?"
That's right. That's right. In fairness, I've started now that I'm off the water from kayaking, I've started rowing. My husband got me a rowing machine, and I rowed in prep school and college. I cannot tell you how wonderful it is to get back to doing that. I feel so much better every day, because otherwise we just sit, hunched over these lap toys, as a friend of mine says.
Not toys.
Hey, but listen, let's start off where we should. Congratulations on finishing a semester.
Thank you very much. I do. Yesterday, actually Thursday, taught my last lecture for my 800-person lecture course, did my last podcast.
All right.
Totally could have predicted that would come out of your mouth next year.
I'm just like a little wind-up toy. You know, I'm going to say the same things every time. So listen,
okay, hold on. I'm already getting nauseous. Okay, hold on. I just want to ask if anybody wants to share. Do you guys like this is this okay? Is this ideal? Or should you see how like my face is bigger? Okay, the other option is to go to something like this. Did I miss it? This, to where my face is smaller. And I actually think I should be larger, because I'm going to be doing commentary. Okay, I guess I just answered my question. If anybody has any comments, I'm going to make it smaller, okay? I know we can't see Richardson's cold sore up close when I make it small. Oh, I like the first option better. Okay, great. Thank you. Is this the first option? Is this what you're talking about, where my face is bigger? Because I feel like I said, I'm going to be stopping and doing commentary, and I don't want to feel like I'm like, can you just confirm that that's what you were saying? I like the first option. Is this the first option? Yes. Okay, perfect. Great. Thanks. Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, here we go. Perfect.
Before we get into things, I didn't say hello to everybody who's coming in from New Hampshire and Toronto and so on, but I did want to call out a thank you to Lee from Scotland. I did get your message today, and I will do what I can. And I thought that was just such a sweet note and such a sweet thing you did. And you said you were going to watch, so there you go. Hi, and thank you, and I'll do what I can. Anyway, Joanne, what are we going to talk about today? The news is like, I was thinking about this. The news feels to me kind of, I hate to say this, kind of like gray. That is, there's lots of stuff happening, but aside from the really big stuff, the attacks on the people in Venezuela, the big national security document, all those sorts of things, like lots of stuff is just kind of bubbling along. And it's not, I mean, we could go over it, but it's not I don't know. I sort of feel like one of the things we do well is we do fun things that mean stuff. And I got nothing fun that means stuff. I got a lot of non-fun stuff that means stuff.
Well, yeah, fun is a different thing. I mean, I thought you were giving a clever segue into one of the things that we had talked about beforehand when you said that the news is gray. And maybe you didn't mean that to be a segue, but
or maybe I did.
Or maybe you did. You should just say you did. One thing that struck me in the last few days, mostly because people were screaming about it on social media, was that the Pantone company has a color of the year every year. It picks a color of the year, and then you get to see magazines.
This is where Richardson pretends she doesn't know
wallpaper in the color. And apparently, the color that Pantone chose for 2026 is Cloud Dancer White. Now, I don't mean here to slap at Pantone.
What is Pantone?
I mean,
is it like makeup or something?
No, it's paint.
Oh, it's paint. Really?
Well, I don't know if it's a paint company. We should look that up. But it's not makeup. It's a paint palette, and they have you look up Pantone colors. They're all like numbered and named.
It's a universal language of color that enables color critical decisions through.
It's a palette
through products and services.
Yeah. So they as that sort of
that's a good gig if you can get it. I'm sorry.
I'm color queen.
All right. So they come up with a new color every year, right?
They name a new every year one that's going to be for the next year the color of the year. And they all have names like Penelope Pink or whatever they are. They all have some kind of name like that. This is Cloud Dancer White. And again, as I said before, I don't mean to be slapping at Pantone for doing this. What struck me simply was in this particular moment, this cultural moment, choosing white. This is what people were screaming about on social media. They were like, really? Like white? And the argument is it's calming. It's kind of a blank space where you can fill in what you want. I understand the argument. But culturally speaking, in this moment, to say 2026 is the year of white seemed to me kind of problematic, generally speaking.
Oh God, I'm sorry. Like we are in such a ridiculous moment. Like yes, and obviously we need to talk about this. We need to talk about this moment of white supremacy. We need to talk about the double-edged sword of being able to write our future. We need all of those things. But like, really?
As they cackle about it. Okay, hold on. Okay. So to racist, privileged white women, everything is about race also. Liberal, I should add that in probably in there too. Everything is about race, and everything that has to do with the Trump era is about white supremacy. So this moment, what did she say? This moment in time, we have to address white supremacy this moment in time. And then they cackle about it because it's so funny, because it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous that we are at this cultural moment in time where white supremacy is a huge problem, that only liberals can identify the irony in Pantone. Seemingly an innocent bystander would be so tone deaf, they call it, to name the color of 2026 to be white. Yeah, right. I already know where this is going. Yeah, right. Right. And then they laugh about it. So it's like, this reminds me of like the No Kings protests, right? Because they're fighting authoritarianism and fascism, right? But if you're going to fight authoritarianism and fascism, I mean, is it serious or is it not? Right? Are we going out there and making a joke about it by dressing up in costumes and pretending that Trump is a king and all that stuff? Are we making, is it funny? Are we trying to our way to resist authoritarianism? Because I know Joanne had mentioned about the tactics to stop authoritarianism. How did she call it again? I forget. Laugh. I forget when she was talking about with memes and, like their way of stopping authoritarianism is to make jokes and laugh. And they actually think that dressing up in the costumes is a point of strength because you're laughing in the face of it, right? So this is what they're doing. They're saying like white supremacy is such a huge problem, right? Oh, but we're in such a ridiculous time. We're so ridiculous. So it's like, is it a problem or is it not a problem? Or are we just, what is the laughing? What is the joking about? Yeah. So the white supremacists are now controlling the color of the year commission now, apparently. Yeah, exactly. Look at them laughing about it. Like, is it funny or is it not? Is it serious or is it not? I don't know.
And again, I had someone who worked in the corporate world before I went into the academic world. I understand how these decisions get made. Right. So I don't mean to necessarily say like, capitalism, but it's a tone deaf kind of decision.
Well, it also speaks to who was in the room when they decided to pick
that's probably true.
Because I can't, I mean, obviously you and I would have been like, oh no, we're not going to go with white. But I mean, again, one of the things that it's
because Heather and Joanne would have used their white faces and their white bodies to stand in the way of the white supremacy, right?
That my big thing coming into the end of 2025 and into 2026 is 2026, we get to write our future. So there is that, and there is that idea of white as potential for the future, which I'm sure is what they suggested. You can write whatever you want on that, which I love.
You can write white supremacy on it, like you guys are doing.
But let's deal with the white thing.
My revolutionary guys said that all the time. We've got a blank slate. Now, they didn't have a blank slate, but they were very excited that they were, in a sense, had a white canvas.
Hey, what did they write on blank slates with in those days? Did they literally have chalk from the ground?
I think they had chalk. I don't know. I mean, one has to assume this
is her segue.
What they wrote with on blank slates. They had chalk.
Because my old ancestors were school teachers, and we literally have one of their slates, a real slate, like the one that Anne of Green Gables breaks over Gilbert's head, and it's in a frame. It's literally pieces of slate in a frame, and we always use chalk on it.
Right.
But I wonder if they just dug up chalk. Anyway, that is such a Richardson rabbit hole. I will climb back out of that, because that focus on white right in this moment is of course written all over this administration, which is doubling down on white supremacy really very openly.
Really proudly, not just openly, proudly. Yeah.
Well, and here's another piece of that. I mean, it showed up in the national security strategy document that they dropped this.
Hold on.
Issues chalk on it. Right. But I wonder if they just dug up chalk. Anyway, that is such a Richardson rabbit hole. I will climb back out of that, because that focus on white right in this moment is of course written all over this administration, which is doubling down on white supremacy really very openly.
Proudly, not just openly, proudly. Yeah.
Well, and here's another piece of that. I mean, it showed up in the national security strategy document that they dropped this week. And I'd love to talk to you some about the Monroe Doctrine, but what was key about that was the introduction to it sets up what is essentially a fascist vision of the United States of America. And you can see that fascism and embrace of white supremacy in the social media account of the Department of Homeland Security, where they are really pretty much openly pulling images from Nazi Germany and putting a sort of an American gloss over them and putting them out as something that we want. You can see it in Stephen Miller, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, working so hard to get rid of brown people, especially, although he has no love for Black Americans either, out of this country, literally by sending them back home to their original countries or by rendering them to third countries where they get then deposited either into incarceration or into countries where they had protection against going because there was concern they would be killed or tortured or killed. You can see it in that. You can see it in all these different aspects of getting rid of women and people of color from positions of authority and all that.
Oh,
but
God.
one of the things that really jumps out to me about that in this moment is the extraordinary, I think, like reveling in cruelty.
Well, right. I mean,
Reveling.
right. And reveling in it and advertising it, gleefully.
Right.
So, you were just mentioning the many ways in which white supremacy is showing itself all over this administration. The obvious one that I just need to throw in there is the fact that they are sending us, or simply doing in the open public, images of them basically picking people off the street who look like they're not us, meaning they're basically don't look white, and are being, even if they're not necessarily being deported somewhere, they're being, beaten or thrown to the ground or whatever it is, that there's physical attacks and aggression. People are being assaulted because of the color of their skin by masked men. Just
by
imagine
masked
uttering
men.
that.
No. They're not. Yeah, right. They're not being attacked because of the color of their skin. Okay. Y'all know this though, like it can't take me to tell you. They're not being attacked because of the color of their skin. Okay. Just to be clear. And there is a marketing effort, yes, to put that out there on social media. Now, I may agree with that. We've definitely talked about the optics before. The optics are not always what we would consider to be favorable. And that's probably something that they have to work on. And it sounds like that they were. Because XF had even said about the optics. And then like 2 weeks later, they were advertising on, I think it was the Department of Homeland Security. I think it was for like a marketing person, right? A marketing position that they wanted to hire for. So I think that branding and optics and marketing and messaging is an important thing. But look at all the messaging that government does, right? Look at all the messaging that we saw with the Biden administration. There were trannies on the White House lawn, for one, that was on social media. Remember that aide who had the long fingernails, the boy, and he had the long fingernails and he was just, doing his social media stuff. Those are just two examples. I'm trying to think of something else that the Biden, just think about the marketing that the CDC has done. Look at all the marketing that's been done, especially with the, 2020 COVID and everything. Think about all the marketing that is being done. Look at the American Academy of Pediatrics right now. Look at their marketing right now of what they're doing to counter what the CDC is saying about the Hep B vaccine for infants, and just vaccines in general. So the marketing, to act like government doesn't do marketing, or that, you're going to spin this as it's some sort of embrace of cruelty, or that you can certainly, sure, you can make that argument if you just woke up one day and you're going to see it. But no, they're doubling down on their marketing, for sure. But by masked men, right? By masked men. And not just because of the color of their skin. So y'all are constructing this narrative about that the Trump administration is targeting people because of the color of their skin. Do you see how that's not helpful or true? Do we have to go over this?
Sentence.
Well,
you-
and some of them screaming, "I'm a U.S. citizen."
Oh,
right,
no.
right.
Okay. You guys know the clip that she's talking about of the girl who was her and her boyfriend. Her boyfriend was not a U.S. citizen. And when she rolled up to customs or wherever she was, she refused to get out of the car. She refused to show identification. And the people in the comments are like, you don't have to show identification. Okay, well, fuck around and find out. Go ahead and do that. Like, that's the problem, that we have gotten to this point. Okay. So it's been so lenient that it's gotten to this point. So with the girl, the viral video of the girl screaming, "I'm an American citizen." So she was let go, but there was definitely more to the story of that. So they're not targeting American citizens, and it's just so wild, dude. So wild, because the Biden administration, Russia collusion, all that shit that happened with Obama, like, they've been targeting American citizens for how long? Now, I know you guys were super busy doing, like, writing your books and in academia and doing whatever you're doing. And maybe you didn't feel targeted. And Heather, the only time you started to feel targeted is whenever Charlie Kirk's organization put you on the professor's watch list. And you wanted to be a victim about that. You never did get over that, as we noticed. But they've been targeting American citizens for years. So, and that's what the Trump administration is unwinding. They target American citizens all the time for so many different things. So to act like, this is like the end all be all, the hill that we must die on, is so absurd and actually tone deaf.
It's
So
not
all
okay
of
for
these
anybody, but that's a biggie.
and it doesn't matter. All of these things. So it's not just like, I think they're white supremacists. It's just, they are. They might as well wear a little badge on their chest. They're happy about it. They're advertising it. The Trump corollary is a way of stating it and framing it and making it seem legitimate by linking it to the Monroe Doctrine. Oh, it's a corollary. That must mean something really official. It's real. In one way or another, they are masking many things in this administration. And although the masked men on the streets are wearing black, they're masking everything else in white in this administration.
That's really well put. On the cruelty front, I do want to call out, I believe it was Megyn Kelly talking about the double tap strike on the apparently Venezuela.
The cruelty. They have to go hunting for cruelty so far. They have to go to Venezuela. They have to go to the border to find cruelty, when our governments were the most cruel of all, trying to force these mandates on our children. People lost their jobs. I mean, that is the biggest fuck up that the elites could have ever done. I'm sure there's trade-offs and there's benefits of, for sure. We could talk about those. But the fact that people saw in their own backyard the cruelty, again, just forcing all of these things that we found out later for them to not be actual, for them to be arbitrary, that we look at the Fauci emails and we look and see that, like, social distancing was arbitrary. And we look to see that, at least in Pennsylvania, the Department of Health actually tried to write, an unlawful order and have to lie and say that we have to treat everybody in the school as though they are sick in order to be able to do the modified quarantine and force everybody to wear a mask and isolate, so that kids weren't able to so that they had to stand 6 feet apart. So kids couldn't get their speech therapy. Kids couldn't get their physical therapy. Kids went 2 years without speech therapy in person. They had to wear masks to learn fucking speech therapy. How cruel is that? How ridiculous is that? Women were forced to give birth. To the birthing industry, let's not get started. However, women are forced to wear masks and not have their partner with them when they're giving birth. The elderly were forced to die alone. People weren't allowed to attend their funerals. So when you talk about cruelty, dear elders, when you talk about cruelty, and you have to go so far to find it, and now you're going to talk about Venezuela and the double tap and the boat hits or whatever, and yet the cruelty that everybody still remembers and everybody experienced is still a visceral memory, and everybody still remembers it and experienced it, and they don't forget. Y'all seem to forget because you were, I'm sure, right in line with that, doing your virtual Zoom calls, right?
Villains in a boat that the administration claimed was a drug boat, and the strikes themselves seem as if they are illegal, but the double tap strike seems like it is not only illegal, it's a war crime. And what was really shocking to me was the fact that you had a host on television talking about celebrating.
Hold on. A war crime? And now we're talking about war crimes? What? The name of this show, it's not called Hags of History, but it is called What the Heck Just Happened? That's how it feels watching this show. What the heck just happened? Now we're talking about war crimes. They have to go find it in this little narco boat. These are war crimes. And now she's going to go ahead and she's going to cry about somebody, what?
Celebrating cruelty. I want to see them bleeding out. I want to see, and I thought, first of all, if anybody I knew talked that way, and I know a lot of people in a lot of walks of life, my first reaction would be to make sure they got help.
Right.
And then to be concerned about whether the people they loved were safe. And the fact that she is saying this.
What is with this virtue signaling? Like, where have y'all been? Why do you pick and choose where you want to provide your empathy? It's like, oh, if this happened, if this isolated, not to mention Lake and Riley and everybody, all the other victims, that Ukrainian girl on the subway, not to mention all of the victims and the families that have testified over and over and over again. It's super strange. It is, and then something I do wrestle with is like, okay, is it that the thought just doesn't cross their mind because they're so focused on this narrative and they're so focused on this effort to like just shit on Trump with everything that he's doing in the administration and just do the Democratic Party narrative run and try and just focus on this because the ends justifies the means? Or do they actually recognize the hypocrisy? And I lean towards they don't recognize the hypocrisy because they are in the self-validating echo chamber, isolated, quarantined media sphere within themselves. And they just can't see outside of that. And so they can't recognize it is the hive mind, and they can't recognize their blind spots and where they lack nuance and compassion, right, on it. Because you can't have this grotesque and extreme of a position and still carry normal nuance and perspective within yourself, right? So this is what we talk about with the bifurcated reality, but with the media spaces, with just people are living different, they are just seeing things in completely different ways. So that's being generous, right? Because then the other option is that they know very well that they are running this script that is maybe innocent to them, right? Again, because this is like the breakaway civilization of, the death cult with the dying elite that is still fighting for power and position, right? Still using their collateral and soft, whatever power they have to maintain And so, you know, it's the flailing. But they may very well just not recognize the overt hypocrisy, because they don't live in, they don't recognize the seriousness of doing this and doing the dance of, because they think it's all part of the game. It's like that Jennifer Welch lady who was just so, again, grotesque and such a crustacean. And just, it's like when you're, you know, fighting with somebody, and if they like hit you in the face, you're like, we were just arguing. Like, why would you hit me in the face? Why would you? It's like, oh, well, you were hurting me with your words. That's how they are. You know, the playing field, they cannot do it with, they can't do it here. So then they have to overcompensate with this type of rhetoric and feel validated, because they are themselves victims of their story, of this whole thing. They are the victims of this story. So then they also have to then, you know, make victims of others in order for their worldview to make sense.
On television, and people are nodding along. The one person was nodding along, but people have been cheering her on social media. I thought, you know, yes, you can say, oh, she's terrible, but it is also the end game of white supremacy or any kind of an ideology that elevates one group of people over another, that you can openly embrace, you know, basically torture and death as something to be celebrated, as a sign that you're not them. And it reminded me a great deal of the lynching photographs from the early 20th century.
Oh, the lynching photographs. Do you guys notice the hypocrisy with her never talking about Gaza? And this is sort of like a dear letter to her audience as well. Do you guys recognize that she doesn't talk about Gaza? She didn't talk about Gaza for 2 years. And she'll say, oh, well, it's because I don't get into the Middle East. I don't get into, you know, that's not my specialty. I stay in my what lane are you staying in is my question. What lane are you actually staying in? You know, so to talk about cruelty and war crimes, and to just not be able to call out the elephant in the room of the things that we've all seen with our own eyes, of the horrific war crimes and crimes against humanity over the last number of years, right? And then to take this one piece and just to really hone in on it and act like you're you're so virtuous and holier than thou that you're then going to call out people for, saying like we don't want narco terrorism, like we don't want drugs coming into our country, like we don't want it anymore. Have you guys thought about that before you hit record? Or
country where people were proud to be seen at lynchings, because it meant that they were the people who were purifying society. And
then she goes back to this again, where she pulls, because she's the historian, so she pulls things from the past and then tries to apply it today and confuses her audience and does this emotional maneuvering where she wants people to then have emotional reaction to thinking about lynching and crimes against Black Americans, and then pulling it into today.
I'm not sure we make enough of that comparison between the cruelty that we're seeing against Brown Americans and the celebration of lynching that we saw.
How many Brown Americans voted for Trump, though? How many Brown Americans actually support what he's doing, bringing in the National Guard into towns? We've already reviewed this. Cleaning up the border, closing the border, in fact, right? How many Brown Americans actually support these things? Have you looked into that at all?
With Black Americans, especially in the early 20th century.
Right. I agree with everything that you're saying. I think also,
And Black Americans have also turned to Trump because they are tired of what the Democratic Party has done to them, to their communities, to their families. And they are tired of being pawns in the Democratic Party machine. So it's a really big problem for you guys, for the Democratic Party. For politically, it's obviously definitely a really big problem. But it's obviously more so a problem for people that live in the world, right? Not you guys, because you guys don't give a fuck about like actual policy or like how people actually have to suffer at the hands of bad policy again, right? So the victims we are, if we want to talk about victims, I mean, it's the American people, right? I mean, it's the policies again that have destroyed communities, kept people on welfare, made the cost of living so high, made working actual of integrity jobs not available for people, right? Have created such a disparity. And you guys would say that it was all the Republicans' fault. You'll never talk about how it's actually the Democrats' responsibility as well. We'll never do a power analysis here, that's not what we're here for. I don't know what we're here for. Let's find out.
I agree with you that when I that particular statement about wanting to see them bleed and my first thought was, imagine being that person and saying that thing at all, and then saying it on television and saying it proudly. So that I bet a lot of people watching right now had that.
How about the people like you guys who said Charlie Kirk was not a good person, or I didn't want him to die? But what about those people? We just watched a video of Jennifer Welch a couple episodes ago where she was laughing about a woman who was being interviewed at a No Kings protest saying, "I'm glad that he's not here anymore." And the girl was like, "You're glad that he was murdered, ma'am?" Yeah. Like, you guys are so hypocritical. Why? Yes, we go into the psychology here about what motivates somebody to actually do that. And it's because they have a distorted view of reality and of this virtual story that is being told to them that they feel justified. See, this is why we do this media literacy, is because these people feel justified because they have been given this narrative and this story about someone that they don't even know. So they're not even looking at Charlie Kirk as though he's a real person, that he was a real person with a real family. And now with everybody talking shit on Erica Kirk, this is just a soap opera to everybody. Nobody actually is looking. Nobody like you guys are actually looking at the fact that he was a real person, and did he actually deserve to be publicly executed for his political and religious views?
Response. But in addition to that, and it's a way of, related to what you just said, normalizing that, celebrating that, suggesting, and that's related to, everything that people talk about when they talk about like, what do...
Dude, y'all are taking this situation. Quit magnetizing everything. Quit taking, I'm sorry, I'm doing this. I'm doing the clapping, yelling thing. Sorry. Quit taking all of our work, guys, and turning it into your storyline, okay? You want to take the cruelty of this news anchor that you didn't even mention her name or whatever, and we don't even know what she's talking about. You guys could at least play a clip so we know what you're talking about. And normalizing that. Do you see the irony here? Do you see the problem? Because what you do is you demonize people. You demonize Trump and the Trump administration so hard. And you demonize Trump voters, Trump supporters, or even people that are not toting the party line of the Democratic Party. Anybody who doesn't hate Trump. But you definitely, let's just go off of, I know that there's some questions about people. I mean, there's definitely an Israel question when it comes to MAGA, Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff, the economy. I mean, there's definitely things going on within MAGA because it's a big tent party. Yes, there are like Trump loyalists in the sense of like, but that's not most people, right? And so you want to demonize over half of the country into thinking that, this is our biggest problem, or this is where the cruelty lies, or this is where, they're normalizing cruelty, or they're normalizing these war crimes. Like, what are you talking about? Your audience has to see and recognize the hypocrisy and how you're just zooming in on this one thing, when there's this whole, all these other things going on, especially again, with the war in Gaza, with all the horrific stuff that we've seen over the years with that. And then going back to even the war in Ukraine and the things that the Ukrainian government has done. And you guys want to blame things on the Russians, but the Ukrainian government, what they have done to their own people. Hello, what do you think that they were doing in the Donbass since 2014? Like, what do you think has been going on? They've been targeting their own people. So to now take this one thing and say, well, they're normalizing this, like you by dismissing the public assassination of Charlie Kirk are normalizing people being publicly assassinated for their political and religious beliefs, talking about it because it makes you feel uncomfortable. And because you disagree with it, and you think that he's doing more damage because, see, you guys act like he was doing calls to violence or something when he wasn't at all. He wasn't at all. He was actually he was annoying to people, and people disagreed with him, and he was antagonizing because people were triggered by his approach and his candidness and his directness and his conviction. But he wasn't calling for violence. He was doing the exact opposite. And so you're normalizing something that we should be able to do, which is to have uncomfortable, awkward, annoying conversations. You're normalizing that then it's okay. Because he, was, and then you'll want to label him. He was transphobic. He was racist. Okay. So, we need to clean this up, and we need to get right, because you're perpetuating a storyline that is dysfunctional, and it's not actually representation. It's not representative of how people genuinely, like, outside of this virtual sort of thing that's this created, we're watching this on a screen, right? And it's being sent out on Facebook and YouTube and stuff. It's like short clips. I'm not even sure anybody would actually watch this entire video from beginning to end. So there's that. But that's why it's clipped into shorts. But I think that when people have conversations in person, I don't think that I think that they can agree that, like, yes, this is not right. And I think you're going down the wrong path whenever you keep trying to say, like, we're normalizing this, when we need to clean up. You guys need to course correct and reflect and have self-awareness about the trajectory that you have taken society on. That the Democratic Party, but the narrative and the mindset that has been cultivated, this victimhood mindset, right? To where people feel that they are entitled to violence, where people feel that they are entitled to be able to take what they believe is theirs. And sometimes it's the life of someone, right? And like, we saw that with sort of holding water for, some of these other incidents. I guess I want to be careful with what I'm saying because we are on YouTube. But just the narratives that are run about different things, and how much has been put onto society because of that. And these people have been enabled. We saw a clip of that girl, Erin, that's not her name. She ran for something. She has like a unique name. It begins with a A. She ran for something in Tennessee. Remember, she had blonde hair. She just lost, though, to a Republican. But she was saying how, like, they were showing clips of her from back in 2020, how she was saying like, we can't go into Black communities and tell them how to feel, when she was talking about like the summer of love, whenever people were setting businesses on fire and destroying property, and there were riots and such. She was saying like, we can't tell them, we can't put ourselves in their shoes, and they're responding to the pain and trauma and suffering that they've experienced. And it's, I'm sort of sensing it's like the same thing. Is like, when you've pushed people to this point and then you enable them and you allow them to act in ways that are obviously not appropriate, ethical, moral, or legal, and you hold water for these people, and there is no justice, right? So it's like, we want social justice, but we want it our way. So that's all been bubbling, that all happened. Humanity and society is still healing and recovering from all of the traumas that we've experienced as the collective, individually, right? We've all experienced things individually, but then collectively. And so there's so much of that that's being missed when we're just talking about this, present moment. We're not reflecting. And then when we do reflect, it's like we go back into 1885 and we try and pull that in and act like, oh, it's this, it's this connection with, it's exactly that, it's exactly that. Like fascism was what it was at the time, right? So, and white supremacy, we can look up the definition of white supremacy, but to say that it's obvious and it's exactly what it is not right. It's not actually correct. And so where is the accountability for using that kind of language to, again, trigger people and to try and essentially slander the moment? You're slandering the present moment, really. You're confusing people.
Authoritarian or regimes or dictators do, or what did the Nazis do when they wanted a them to go against, to unite the us? And, they call people bugs and rats and cockroaches, and they dehumanize them. This is like one click away from that. Like, we want to see them.
They demonized Charlie Kirk. Like they just did this. Like what day is it? Let's just go back a couple months. They just did this whole thing with Charlie Kirk. They demonized him and presented it in a way of like, oh, he deserved it, or he set himself up, or what did you expect?
Or we want to see them bleed. It's the next step from the sort of bullying bravado that this administration usually portrays as well, that, we get what we want and, whatever. Like years ago at Trump rallies where he would say, some version of if you, attack someone here, if you hit someone here, then I'll get you off, or something, that they didn't necessarily frown on violence. So in a way, it's on TV, it's some woman pronouncing it to a newscaster, it seems harmless. But when that refrain is repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated, and you see it visually, you see it in those, Homeland kind of documents and the font that they choose.
What about when you guys are saying over and over and over again, Trump supporters, MAGA Republicans, MAGA extremists, Nazis, Hitler, over and over and over again? I mean, I was here in 2024. I know you took your videos down on Facebook and you have to go digging for them in YouTube, but I mean, I watched this content in 2024 and 2023 and part of 2022. So you want to talk about marketing, messaging, and repetition.
Choose again and again and again. It becomes white in your brain, right?
Safe and effective, right? Like that.
It becomes a norm, not because you like it, not because you accept it, but because you see it.
That's why Richardson does a show like every other day.
Everywhere. And you then start to question, you shouldn't, but it's logical to start to question, like, am I the only normal one here?
So it sounds like, because people that support this or support Trump or like really almost don't maybe care either way. Like people want the economy to get better. People want safety in their neighborhoods. They want law enforcement funded. They want good law enforcement. They don't want corruption. And so the border and having to do with our economy is directly related. And people know that. People know about the drugs, and people know about the crimes and the collusion with cartels and such, and the elections and such. Okay. So it's important to people because they understand that it does affect them personally, because all of these things are related. And you can call MAGA and you can call rural Americans or whatever, not smart people or whatever, but people understand, at least now, and attributed much to Trump starting whenever he was campaigning in 2015 or 2016. But, they understand that there's a direct correlation. So people aren't looking at it that closely. They're not like, oh, this is, something that they need to be upset about or resisting, or that it's wrong or whatever. They think that what the criminals are doing is wrong. They don't think that the media messaging is wrong, because they believe that the criminals are wrong and the drugs are wrong, and that the trafficking and the crime and the shitting of our economy and the American worker and all of this is wrong. They think that what Biden did was wrong with the border. We just watched the testimony from 2023 of all the children that they just did not follow up with the sponsors with. And so then they lost communication with all these children that they put in the hands of sponsors. This was all back in 2023. So the only people that are having this sort of experience that you're describing, which I'm not even sure is real, it might just be you're just doing it for the show. Less people are having that experience. So you're worried about people being brainwashed with this content, like this is all normalized. But you have to remember and understand that this is what people voted for. So this isn't like new marketing messaging content. This is being normalized for people. This is just, people aren't really looking at it that closely. So, it's bothering you. Maybe that's the point, is that it bothers you and others that think like you, and do marketing messaging like you. So, it's okay.
Like is everyone just going along with this? Like it ends up feeling like it's a majority statement, a majority feeling.
Dude, this is like when we watched John Fetterman talk on the Night Show about how, like, the lie, you won, but depression tells you that you didn't win the election. You won, but depression tells you that you didn't win. It's like, you may not have won, John. I'm not sure. Like, if we look at the numbers and we look at the mail-in voting and we look at the numbers, and like, you may not have won. So that might be true. But she's like, it feels like a majority. Who's going to tell her? It is, hun. It is a majority, hun. Okay. It's a majority. I know how to speak. It's majority. I understand. But I'm see, we do bad accents here. We make bad jokes, but yeah, it's a majority. Okay. That's what people voted for. Yeah. So so what you're feeling, your fear that Trump won is, yes. Yeah. I would say that that's probably a good representation of where you're at. You know what I mean? Like, what's coming up for you. Because yeah, it's a majority.
Which it isn't.
No, it isn't.
No one believes it, but it's not the majority. But when it's so,
I also want to say that I'm not saying that, like, if there's an element of cruelty here, okay, let's say that there's an element of cruelty here. Of course, I personally don't seek out, like, because I didn't watch Cops. You know what I mean? Like, back in the day, bad boys, what you gonna do? Okay, I didn't watch Cops. Like, I don't want to watch necessarily. I mean, I guess some of the episodes are funny if it's somebody that's, just drunk or whatever. But I don't want to watch things like that. Okay, for example. So I don't, but I may not be like, again, the target market, right? Of just like having to do marketing for this effort. And again, we can talk about sort of like, maybe this isn't the best way to go about this from a marketing perspective. Well, maybe that was crossing the line a little bit. And people aren't naturally, I mean, I think everybody has like a cruel, cruelness in them, right? Because we're all hardened by life and by things. And I think that we're all human and we all have that instinct to self-preserve, right? Obviously, we have that instinct. You guys know we have the instinct to self-preserve and that survival instinct. So I think we would naturally, and like if you think about defending your children, protecting your children, like you would be cruel. I mean, you could say the things that I'm saying here are cruel because I'm being rude, right? So everybody is cruel in a, everybody could be that way. But again, to market what they're saying is like to market that cruelty. I can see what they're saying. Again, if this was an isolated incident, and I think that can you get away with it by not doing it, right? Like because it doesn't. If people don't know about it, it didn't happen. Okay. If people didn't know about it, it didn't happen. So they have to use social media and they have to use this marketing. Do I think that the majority of people want to see these videos of ICE agents? No. I think that it's a numbers game where it's like it's going to hit somebody's eye at one point, but they're going to tune out. And does it do something on a subconscious to where it normalizes cruelty and violence? I don't think in any other way than video games or movies, or you turn on anything and there's normalization of cruelty. TikTok, recording kids doing stupid stuff, TV shows. I mean, you could make a lot of evidence to support that, like cruelty on all of these, in all of these areas is normalized. So I don't think that the majority of people want to seek out this content, I guess is what I'm saying. I do not think that that's true. I think that the majority voted for it. And I think that most people are able to like tune out what they're watching and they don't have to seek it out, and they don't, the people that support it are like, yeah, they're doing their job. Like, but we've already been desensitized in a way to all of this stuff in a way.
Prevalent when it's everywhere, and when it's so, there's nothing subtle about white supremacy, right? It's not like we have to figure it out. It's obvious what it is, and so it just entrenches itself instantly, and for that reason, it can be hard to push away. It can be hard to get out of people's minds and to get past it to something that's truer and actually grounded on a democratic small d sensibility.
So, I think it's interesting.
So if you make white supremacy everywhere, it might be hard for you to actually get out of that and see the reality of what's happening. So I will counter with that.
Interesting that you're right. You can't miss it. And it's absolutely in the open. And yet we're still at a place where a lot of people are like, oh, you're overreacting to that. So, I wrote last night about the NSS document, which is an openly white supremacist document. And it echoes a lot of Nazi imagery and so on. And someone said, there's some good ideas in there. And, you've overreacted to that. And I thought, partly Americans can't believe that we are where we are, I think. And that I can't, to me, in a way, I can't wrap my head around that. But I will point out that tomorrow is the anniversary of Pearl Harbor, when we got into World War II, precisely to stand against that kind of an ideology. And the fact that the Trump administration is now embracing it, I just find, and the fact that Americans, and I do think a vast majority of Americans hate this. And we know that from the polls, we know that from language, we know that from pushback and so on. But I can't believe, and I know that I'm a refrain here too, I cannot believe the lawmakers, Republican lawmakers, aren't standing up and saying, wait a minute, when did we become Nazis? Because they have become Nazis. And
right. Silence now is participation. In the face of this kind of blatant, everywhere, proud policy, white supremacy, if you're not standing up, then you're essentially supporting it. Now, it is a refrain, and in some way, it's been years that I've been saying, wait, why doesn't anyone speak up? Wait, why doesn't anyone speak up? I remember really early on, back in the days before Twitter was X, like privately contacting someone and saying, is it like, how is this happening right now? Like way back, way towards the beginning. And the person, political historian, and I went to him because I thought, like, he'll have something to say. And what he said was, I can't believe they're not saying anything. And then I knew, it wasn't just me, early American historian, thinking, is this really the way things normally work? No, it's not the way things normally work. So I agree that that's the case. I also agree, I want to add to what you just said about people still not believing where we are, although you and I have been talking about this for a long time. American exceptionalism has a heck of a kick, right? American exceptionalism, talk about something being entrenched. The idea that we will always be okay because we're the United States of America is it's like lore. It's like we're raised on the idea that it will always be okay here because of that. And because of that, and because people love that idea and need that idea, it becomes a hard thing to push past. And then you do end up sounding like crazy liberal person, always looking for the negative. It's like, no, actually, just looking around, right? Exceptionalism can blind you to the obvious things that are happening around you. And we need to be aware of the exceptionalism. We need to be aware that we have that buried in us.
Y'all have the exceptionalism buried. Okay. You do know that the public disclosure and what everybody's experienced with COVID and with the elections over the last number of years, you do know that everybody got a crash course in why American exceptionalism is not, like, why America is not exceptional, right? Okay. Like, that's what this whole public disclosure too has been about. Is like, people are aware of, like, maybe things aren't so great, or like, oh, wow, I didn't realize all of these things that the government, if you look at some of this stuff that's been, whistleblower testimony, or just all of the corruption that we've seen over the last, especially the Biden administration, but just again, with the Russia collusion and all the stuff that was unraveled, Trump, they tried to impeach him twice. And, why Trump even got elected in the first place, the first time. So just everything that everybody has just been through. So it's that awareness and that sobering and that reckoning that people have had to realize that, like, oh, wow, like the US has done these things, and they've done these things to their own people, and they've done these things to other countries and to other things in the name of, right? In the name of preserving democracy, right? At home and abroad. So we've had to again learn about all of those things
to be able to get past it.
So I had an interesting conversation with Waj Ali yesterday.
Oh God!
And, my big thing in history has always been that in the 1870s, what reactionary former Confederates did really effectively was they married race and class in the United States, so that they could stop talking about hating the idea that Black Americans would participate in voting and in the economy by saying, hey, we got no problem with Black Americans, because by then, with the 1870 establishment of the Department of Justice, you could go to federal prison for discriminating against Black Americans based on race. So they started to say, hey, we got no problem with Black Americans based on their race. We don't want poor people voting. And that linking of race and class in America, almost all of my work has really centered that.
No,
with
it hasn't,
the idea that you can't untangle them, because if people are not using racial language, they can use coded class language, which is exactly what you saw in the busing crisis in the 1970s, for example. But
it's masked racism,
right?
Masked
it's masked racism. But what what Waj said, which was kind of a light bulb for me, is he said, and he didn't have that background, and he said, when is it going to be the case that Americans will wake up and realize that we have got to make class and race-based coalitions to push back against this very small group of people who are trying to manipulate us? And of course, that's sort of been the subtext for all of my work. But what that really
is that the subtext of all of your work? What do you think MAGA has been? When are people going? And you guys know who this is, right? You know who Waj or whatever his name is, right? That limited hangout dude from that says he's a leftist or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Waj, whatever his name is.
Really said to me was like, yeah, why?
She's going to try and co-op class, not class consciousness, but she's going to try and co-op like this class struggle, right? Because this is all that they do is they co-op MAGA policy, MAGA talking points, and they just want to like cut Trump out, and they just want everything for themselves. Democrats could not do any of these things. And so they have been fighting against this MAGA coalition since 2016. Trump's intricately related to him. We're seeing, it now, but like, this isn't a new thing. It's not going away. They hope it does. They're praying that it does. They're banking on it, and they're trying to siphon the populist faction, but not with Trump. They're trying to take it as their own, right?
Aren't we rolling this out in the same kinds of ways that the US government, in that case, rolled out the World War II narrative of America that says, hey, workers, women, people of color, immigrants, indigenous Americans, we are all in this together against those guys. Because we've got that battle here in the United States now, here, not in Germany and Japan and Italy.
What do
here.
you think?
And I think that we got to roll that out in a much more effective way.
Oh, we need.
Well, I think that's true. I also think
some good marketing.
That the Democrats, is an understatement, are not particularly good at messaging.
No.
So
because they're not good at doing what they say they're going to do, and people are sick of it, and people know that. So they're willing to go a different direction. That's what Maha was about. Maha, MAGA, independence, Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy. Like, what do you think MAGA is? They're saying, we need to do this. We need to all come together on class level. We need to do a historic block to where we all come together and we realize that we're more alike than we are unalike. And we need to have people of color, and we need to have women, and we need to have the marginalized and what did she say? Indigenous people against the mean elites now. Huh? Who's going to fund your endeavors if you are ostracizing the elites? The people? Who's going to fund your endeavors? Fight the oligarchy, funded by the oligarchy, AOC and Bernie Sanders, right? Right? Mamdani, the socialist communist or whatever, right? Fighting for the people. Who's going to fund his campaign if you guys are fighting against the elites? Because they all act in unison, and you guys aren't part of it at all either, by the way. I know this is all grassroots, but the Democrats really need to get better at marketing. See, this has been this whole time with Biden, with Kamala Harris. Like, they don't want to change. They just want to siphon all of the people, the voters. They just want to keep winning elections and stay in power. And they just think that, they don't want a rotation of elites. They just want to keep doing the same thing. They want to siphon good ideas off of people like MAGA, like just regular people, creatives or whatever. They want to censor people. They want to control the narrative. They need better marketing. They can't figure out why it's going the way that it is. Jasmine Crockett's, they pulled her ad down because it was like her sitting there and it's like Trump's voice in the background saying you're a low IQ person. They cannot win any marketing. The left can't mean. They cannot win the marketing game. They cannot win the cultural hegemony because they are so far gone now. Like maybe a few things could we pick up? Does it land a few times? Sure. Maybe we could pick up a few things that landed, but they cannot figure it out. And they don't actually want to do what they're saying. They don't actually want to do a coalition because they had every opportunity to. They're like, this is the present moment. Oh, this is what we're doing, is that we need to all align and we need to go against the elites. And when they say the elites, they mean like Elon Musk, right? Richardson and Mark Elias. I posted a bunch of this stuff in my Telegram, but I did not post it. We didn't talk about it. Maybe, we could watch that video. But I mean, he's all involved in the Supreme Court case right now where he's talking about the campaign finance reform. Like I guess it was, did they win their case on I don't know the details of it, but the Trump administration appealed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ended up taking the case. He's going against it right now, but it's about campaign finance reform. And he's saying that that Republicans just want to, like, the fact that Elon Musk was able to spend so much money and give so much public support to Trump is not right and not fair. So they're saying that, like, we should have campaign finance reform so that, like, all this money can't be dumped into Republican efforts or into Trump campaigns. And I would wonder, like, okay, well then, who's funding the Democratic Party then? Are they concerned that there's more money being spent on Trump initiatives? Is that a real concern for them? Are they actually concerned about that? Because if you look at the interleague conflict within the Democratic, party elites, if you look at, when we went over this in one of the last episodes, as we watched the video with O'Rourke and Norm Eisen, when you look at that conflict, there's a lot going on right now, obviously, with technology and AI. And if you look at, like, just follow like what Musk is doing and like all the, Palantir, but also David Sachs stuff. And I mean, that's like the tip of the iceberg. All this stuff, where does the support lie, right? Like, where does the support lie? They don't have anybody on the Democratic Party. Who are they going to try and roll out? They have Pritzker, Newsom, Pete Buttigieg, and Josh Shapiro. Like, they don't. So they may win local races with Democrats in office. I mean, all politics is local. So like you'll see that the mayor of Miami just flipped for the first time in 30 years to Democrat or whatever. I don't know what's going on in those areas. I mean, Republicans are shitty too, right? Like, Republicans are corrupt too. So, people want change. And so, you're probably going to see that. You're probably going to see Republican seats flip to Democrat because of those things. But as a trend overall, and especially on a federal level, and I don't really know how it's going to shake out. Everybody wants to talk about midterms and everything. But I mean, on a federal level, I don't know. They seem to have it locked in top down too, it seems. I'm not sure. So the marketing. Back to the marketing.
They're not particularly good at thinking about, well, you tell me. I think that very often the sort of political campaign people are thinking about like what needs to be said now for the campaign, rather than thinking about what needs to be said now.
What needs to be done.
What do people need to hear? What needs to be said now in this climate so that people will see things as they are, will understand that now is a moment to act, that it feels subtle, but I don't think it is, that if you're thinking about what should be hearing now, not what's strategically correct.
What's strategically correct versus what people need to be hearing right now. Yes, you want to tell, what are you going to do? You're going to tell them that we need to save democracy from rising authoritarianism. Is that what you're going to tell people? Is that what people need to hear right now? What do you think people need to hear right now? What do you think is the problem?
Correct. We're at that moment, and that doesn't get used all that much, that principle. And that's part of why we are where we are, I think, is because, that's a great, the sort of class race connection, that is a light bulb moment. And that, you know, you could talk about that even without making yourself sound like an academic. The idea of it, of creating a different kind of an us, of bringing us together in a real kind of a we, right? Who are we? Well, our we is much bigger than that other we. Our we is a majority. Our we has diversity within it. Our we has people from all runs of life, right? Our we is powerful, but we need to understand that that's who we are.
So I agree with that. I always look to the Republican Party in the 1850s when they were trying essentially to say, let's smash this old system that has concentrated all the wealth among elite Southern enslavers and instead create a new, fairer system. And in terms of what the big D democratic messaging is, you know, one of the things we've got now that we have not had really since the 1980s, when the radical right began to get its own messaging platforms like talk radio, and then like the Fox News channel in the 1990s, and then, then podcasters and so on going forward, is we now have independent media that is making those connections, that is talking that way. And I think you can see electeds beginning to talk that way more and more. And you can, what's interesting to me is, because I watch this all the time, is you see them testing it out and seeing what works and what doesn't. And so and I'm not going to call out specific people right now, but suddenly somebody will drop an F-bomb in a video. And then you look at reactions, and maybe they'll do it again, maybe they won't, or make a, start to attack an opponent, but maybe go a little far. And you can see that working. But I think the power, I've always thought the power in a society is the storytellers.
Well, unrelated to that, I want to go back for a minute to the 1850s, because what the Republicans
You interrupted her, Joanne.
We always do. What the Republicans did at that moment was partly a matter of their messaging. The new Republican Party, part of what they were doing was saying, okay, we're here to fight the slave power. That was a different message. Yeah. That was a direct message. When you voted for these people,
mad about the messaging.
That's what you were voting for. That wasn't the way that messaging went before, and that kind of rhetoric, and it wasn't just rhetoric, but that kind of rhetoric had a real impact. It was a message, a new kind of message, and it had that newness to it. We're new, we're different, we're here, and that's what we're here for. Vote for us. That was effective. Mm-hmm. So having to do with, who's the best storyteller, that's related to this as well when we're talking about messaging and saying what we feel people need to be hearing right now at this moment, because it's historically and politically and
don't believe your eyes and ears, guys. Just listen to what Joanne and Heather say.
Yeah, and the piece there that echoes in the present is the degree to which they were talking about defending democracy. Right. Again, when we think about history, obviously it changes. The present always changes the past because you look at different things. But when you and I were in graduate school, the real emphasis was on the degree to which the Republicans, and before them the Know-Nothings, focused on issues of abolition, for example. But if you look at early Republican language, what they're really talking about is protecting democracy. And, the word oligarchy comes up again and again and again and again. And Lincoln is all over that. And of course, he takes it further and says, it's not just a question of protecting poor white men. We got to protect poor black men too, if we're really going to do this whole democracy thing. But having people watch their country get taken over by a small group of oligarchs, and have both parties saying, well, maybe we should run a better candidate here, or maybe we should moderate.
Exactly. You had these people step forward in
trying to
that
manifest
moment,
an oligarchical takeover,
and say, we're going to fight that.
Viscerally.
We're going to fight that. We're going to stand up, and again and again and again in Congress, these Republican senators and representatives standing up and saying, we're a different kind of
oligarchs don't act in unison.
Yes.
We're a different kind of person. We represent something different. We're not going to sit down and shut up in the same way that past people did. Something different is happening. We need a Trump.
Where's our Trump?
That's, it again, what I find sometimes when I'm teaching politics to my students, that the tendency is to want to dismiss any and all political language as just political, blah, blah, blah. It's just politics. Sometimes politicians say the thing that needs to be said, and they mean it. right? Sometimes, and in the case of those people,
Okay.
again, this is the world that I've written about.
Glasses.
They were endangering their well-being by doing that, by standing up and saying, we're a different kind of person and we're going to stand up to you. They could be physically attacked for doing that. So they meant what they said, and voters heard that. And that's where you get Abraham Lincoln as president, a new party. And then it has a president within a remarkably short amount of time because the public heard that message. And it needed to hear and understand what it meant. And it needed to see an alternative. It needed to see a way forward.
So one of the things that interests me about that period is, the political parties begin to splinter in the 1840s, and you get the rise of the know-nothings, especially in Massachusetts and New York, which are explicitly anti-immigrant. They are, xenophobic. They're, they're all kinds of bad stuff. But what's interesting about that is that with the rise of the Republican Party, a number of very prominent know-nothings become Republicans and become loyal Republicans and drop the xenophobia, because the Republican Party platform in 1860 actively calls for immigration. Like, that's the first political platform that says, yeah, come on, we want as many people as we can get. And they sign on to it. And I'm thinking of people like Wilson in Massachusetts. Come on, what's his first name? What's that?
Henry.
Okay.
She's like, I don't know.
There is
one other
cobbler
that
he
I
went
want
by,
to,
and he
play here before we move on to something else.
To pick up those, not the crazy MAGAs, but
hold on. Oh, geez.
Interested in destroying that oligarchy. And the minute they got the Republican Party, which was not anti-immigrant, it was simply anti-oligarchy, they became very loyal members of that, and they dropped their xenophobia. And I look at that and I wonder if in this moment there will be opportunities to pick up those, not the crazy MAGAs, but the ones who voted for Trump because they wanted to get rid of the Epstein class.
Well, right. So the thing is,
who's intricately involved in the Epstein class, guys, ladies? So what she's trying to do is they're envisioning separating anti-immigration from getting rid of the oligarchs and the Epstein class. No, because people understand that immigration policy is directly related to crime, government corruption, and the economy and the American worker. People know that. So you can't separate anti-immigration. You can't, just because people want the border closed and they don't want trafficking and they don't want drugs coming into the country, and they don't want trafficking with labor, that doesn't make them anti-immigration, right? And immigration has really changed over the decades, right? I mean, when my relatives immigrated here from different countries, from European countries, they came here and they actually worked. And they also were Europeans, right? So the immigration that we're experiencing now is not European, like people that are coming here under the circumstances of the time, right? Yeah, and you could say that there was then we had like mob culture and there was violence and there was corruption and crime and stuff. I mean, you could probably go in there and do some digging and try and make some comparisons to like, well, immigration of the past, that was European. It did, you could correlate that with crime and corruption and such, right? And violence even. But if you want to talk about anti-immigration related to like white supremacy and people of color, that's a more recent trend, that immigrants are people of color, right? So, and why can't the conditions in Mexico, why did Obama and, why did they create the situations where they were bringing people in from Mexico? They were bringing people in from these other countries and promising things to them and saying X, Y, and Z, right? They did this on purpose. They did all the immigration stuff on purpose because both Democrats and Republicans found it to be valuable for different reasons. And yes, they could always use it as a political pawn. So, but right now it's unsustainable from a security perspective, from an economic perspective, it's unsustainable. So to try and trend up, and make popular anti-immigration, if you think that these videos and what Trump is doing is going to radicalize people and they're going to become now anti-immigration but anti-oligarch, good luck with that.
What you just described was people who were not necessarily entrenched in what they were believing being offered a different way forward.
They don't understand the trafficking connection here. Apparently they don't understand the immigration with the trafficking, with the economy, and again, the resources that people, like how people actually think. It's only based on what they think. They're not thinking about, and people like them, how they think. They're not thinking about, why did someone vote for Trump? No, it wasn't just to get rid of the Epstein class. Nobody thinks that. Okay. And you're calling it the Epstein class when, like, you guys Democrats played just as much of a role in enabling the Epstein class. Like, how do you think politics has worked? Like, it's just so weird now to take this stance and be like, well, we're going to be anti-oligarch, while the oligarchs funding, like, where do you, it can only work with funding and the historic bloc. It can only work that way. You guys are down shit creek without a paddle, but you're fighting every way. That's why we're listening to this, because we're trying to learn. We're trying to understand where other people are coming from. We're trying to understand where the narratives are coming from. And then we're actually going to make connections, and we're going to see patterns, because we're going to go into the NSS here quickly. We've been on here for an hour and a half now. We're going to talk about Brian for a second also. But we are going to talk about how narratives are sort of how they converge. And it all is about this anti-Trump rhetoric, which is very strange, because you're ostracizing, you're not giving peace a chance, and you're ostracizing, again, the majority of people.
Being offered a new vision of where we could go.
You're trying to gaslight them.
And they said, oh, like that actually makes sense to me. So I don't have to be entrenched in this over here. I can believe in this, right? This loops us back to where we started.
They
our
want
conversation.
people to believe in
that. If people can see, if we can see the way forward, ways, there won't even be just one, the ways forward, and people can believe in our ability to do that, which I think is our task for the coming year. I feel like Joanne's
a little bit more
then Heather. They will come to that. They will come towards something that is appeals to they're better angels, right? That appeals to what they would like this country to be.
Okay, let's just.
That's what we need.
Okay.
I am generally not. Well, I was going to say I'm not a modern art admirer, but the fact is I am. I love Mondrian as well, Hockney, all those people. So I guess I do love modern art.
I'm gonna. Oh, there it is. I was forgot her first name. What art I found so profoundly moving that I stayed in the exhibit for a very long time is Marina Abramovich. She's a performance artist.
Oh.
And she has this amazing, and I always had been intrigued about performance art, and it was at the Met, so I could go and see, they had a sort of look at a lot of her works. And she had a piece in which, for example, there was and a lot of her pieces, people are nude because she's talking about the human condition. She had a piece where there was a person lying with a skeleton lying on top of her. And what you saw was the breathing of the person and the moving of the skeleton and the life and death kind of intimacy of that. I watched that for a very long time. There's like literal breathtaking truth in some of what she does. That moves me because that is about the human condition. That's about us. And it's us literally stripped bare. It's about what we feel and what we see and what happens when we come together. I found that, and I was looking at my bookcase because I have a book that I bought at that exhibit because she moved me so profoundly. That is one artist that I find profoundly moving.
Okay, great. Okay.
What a lovely way to start Saturday.
Great. Okay, perfect. Oh, so deep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. Okay. Marina Abramovich. Great, Joanne. Thanks. Thanks. Okay. We definitely We definitely got through it. Yeah. Yeah. Profoundly moving Satanist artist. Poor Joanne. Joanne was like, I was so profoundly moved by this. Oh, isn't that such a great, though, like, metaphor? Overtly representative of all of the hypocrisy, like that it's literally smack in her face and she is interpreting it a completely different way. That is such a great example of just the confusion and the distortion. I have to run by. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it. Okay, so we are going to go to, because we wanted to ask the question, why did Richardson say that the national security strategy document was an overtly racist document? I'm not really sure why she said that. If you go to the document, and I can put the link in the thing, or you just Google it, it has these different, I just want to, is that great? Okay, great. So, you can just read it like, what is American strategy? How American strategy went astray to ensure that America remains the world's strongest, richest, most powerful, most successful country for decades to come. Our country needs a coherent, focused strategy for how we interact with the world. And to get that right, all Americans need to know what exactly it is we are trying to do and why. If you think that they're not going to write that we want to remain the world's strongest, richest, most powerful, most successful country, every country believes that to be true about themselves, or any person, has to believe that about themselves. Like on a personal level, you have to believe that you are capable. And this is a marketing brochure too, in a way, right? So like, why would they not say that? That would be weird if they didn't say that. If Russia was writing a document like this, they would say, like, we want to remain, I mean, I don't know, then maybe that's being presumptuous, but I mean, you don't think China believes that it's the world's strongest, richest, most powerful, most successful country? Like, you don't think that these other countries believe themselves to be like strong and powerful, I guess is what I'm saying. So if America's brand has always been this, right? Of course they would say something like this. A strategy is a concrete, realistic plan that explains the essential connection between ends and means. It begins from an accurate assessment of what is desired and what tools are available or can realistically be created to achieve the desired outcomes. I like the many times that they use the word realism and realistically in this document, because one of the criticisms that we've had over the years is that the Biden administration was not acting realistically, that they actually presented that they believed that Ukraine could win a war against Russia, that the U.S. used and Ukraine as a proxy could win a war against Russia. And so that is not being realistic, right? So they're not doing realism. They were not doing, when it comes to that, the whole conflict every single day. Whenever Blinken would talk about stuff, they were just not being realistic, right? And so, with them being a nuclear power, and I know XF has gotten into this which is like the definition of like a nuclear power being changed, or I can't remember how he described it, like that Obama was changing how Russia was described as a country. And it had to do with the rules, like international law, and then like how the rules were with somebody that is a nuclear power versus not a nuclear power, like the red lines and such like that. And so, when you keep egging on, rattling the nuclear saber, and again, if these people at these high levels of decision making are in conflict with each other and they believe that they want to instigate nuclear war, right? That is obviously game over. And so to be unrealistic and psychotic, and you hear statements from the EU and what's her face, that Callis lady, when you hear these people make these statements, They sound very, I mean, even Netanyahu said a few crazy things about like targeting, like, or what did he say? Something about New York or something. Like, he said some weird stuff and we were like, that's psychotic. Like, hearing these people and these levels of position, you know, Blinken and the guy that looked like the Count Dracula, Matt, I forget his name. Hearing these people over the years just say these things that are like, you know, where are you going with this? Like, where do you think this leads? Like, you're pushing, you're poking the bear, right? You're rattling the saber, but you're again, you're acting like you have a death wish, right? And so isn't it easier and better and safer to do rapprochement and be reasonable? So that was the complete difference in a Trump administration versus a Biden administration. Like the shit that Hillary Clinton would say, but then just stuff that the Biden that would come out, like the State Department, just like every time they would talk, and then you'd have this what's her name? Every time they would talk, it was just like they were normalizing this dysfunction. They're normalizing, you know, transgender marketing to children and stuff. And again, like, this is not against transgender people at all. This is not about the very, very small percentage of people that are actually transgender. Like, no, this is about the Biden White House in all of their documents and trickling down to policy on a local level to where, you know, what's his face in Florida, governors have to like take a stand and be like, you're not going to teach LGBTQ plus stuff to elementary school kids. You're not going to ask 3 and 4-year-olds their pronouns. You're not going to teach them about gender stuff. So, you know, you want to talk about realism versus just this, like, creating this delusion and this dysfunction and cultivating it and pushing it as a narrative, pushing it as messaging, man. Like, and they know through big data analytics how unpopular it is. They know that most people don't believe that. They know most people don't support that. They know where people stand on the vaccine issue. They know where people stand on the transgender issue. They know where people stand on the immigration issue. So for them to take this position of demonstrating power over and pushing people into a position that is so unpopular as a way to exert their power is so dysfunctional and disgusting and evil. But that's cruel. You want to talk about cruelty? That's all the stuff that we just experienced. So you want to wonder why Trump won, right? Okay. So the fact that they're saying the word realism and realist and stuff like that, American strategies, here, let's continue here. A strategy must evaluate, sort, and prioritize not every country, region, issue, or cause, however worthy, can be the focus of American strategy. Okay, so we're decoupling from wanting to get involved in everybody's business all across the world. We don't need to be Team America. We don't need to be going into every single country. That's what they're saying. The purpose of foreign policy is the protection of core national interests. That is the sole focus of this strategy. XF has said that before. Like, what do you think the purpose of the federal government is and foreign policy is? It's not to be going into other countries and preserving democracy in other countries. It's about doing foreign policy is the protection of core national interests. American strategies since the end of the Cold War have fallen short. They have been laundry lists of wishes or desired end states, have not clearly defined what we want, but instead stated vague platitudes and have often misjudged what we should want. I mean, if you are Trump delusional and you are anti-American, or you present with anti-Americanism, like someone like Brian Berletic, then this is going to be confusing to you. You're going to look at it as though, like, this to me, as somebody who is, if you've watched my show, I mean, I guess this is, I mean, the purpose of this show is called Beyond Lines Podcast. So we're trying to look at things from different perspectives. We're not just trying to, I obviously definitely lean more Trump supportive, obviously, because I understand what's going on. Okay. So we're not doing this. Trump derangement syndrome is not our foundation here. Okay. So if If Richardson's reading this, she wants to look at it from a fascist white supremacy perspective, she's going to read this exactly as it is that we need to go back to lynching, I guess, is how Richardson's reading this, right? That's what she said today. She went, or the video we watched, she just went right back to the lynchings. That's not what they mean here. But if you're Brian, you're reading it as though they're lying. Everything that they say is a lie, except when they say that China is an adversary, they're telling the truth, right? So it's like they lie on everything that they say that it is positive. They have been laundry lists of wishes or desired end states, have not clearly defined what we want. After the end of the Cold War, American foreign policy elites convinced themselves that permanent American domination of the entire world was in the best interest of our country. Yet the affairs of other countries are our concern only if their activities directly threaten our interests. So he would say, oh, they're lying here. They want to keep American domination. They're just saying that. But when they say that China, that, we need to keep our military prepared against China, they're telling the truth. So which is it? Are they lying or are they telling the truth? Is it only your interpretation of it? Is that the foundation? Your fucked up neurosis? Is that the foundation of the argument and how we're looking at your analysis? Our elites badly miscalculated America's willingness to shoulder forever global burdens to which the American people saw no connection to the national interests. Hello. Thank you. Like, how is that? That's like exactly what everybody thinks. Like, you want to talk about the oligarchy? Like, dude. Okay. Our elites badly miscalculated America's willingness to shoulder forever global burdens to which the American people saw no connection to the national interest. They overestimated America's ability to fund simultaneously a massive welfare, regulatory, administrative state alongside a massive military, diplomatic intelligence, and foreign aid complex. They placed hugely misguided and destructive bets on globalism and so-called free trade that hollowed out the very middle class and industrial base on which American economic and military preeminence depend. They allowed allies and partners to offload the cost of their defense onto the American people, and sometimes to suck up, and sometimes, whoops, sorry about that, and sometimes to suck us into conflicts and controversies central to their interests, but peripheral or irrelevant to our own. And they lashed American policy to a network of international institutions, some of which are driven by outright anti-Americanism and many by a transnationalism that explicitly seeks to dissolve individual state sovereignty. In sum, not only did our elites pursue a fundamentally undesirable and impossible goal, in doing so, they undermined the very means necessary to achieve that goal, the character of our nation upon which its power, wealth, and decency were built. Well, who can argue with that? This is exactly what we're talking about. This is exactly why Trump was elected. This is exactly big data analytics. This is exactly what people think. And this is exactly what people want. And it's that anti-Americanism that would read this and go, well, fuck the US. The people that don't like this don't want Trump to succeed. They don't want the American people to succeed. And the Richardsons and the Democratic Party, they only want America to succeed if it's on their terms, if they're in power. President Trump's necessary welcome correction. None of this was inevitable. President Trump's first administration proved that with the right leadership making the right choices, all of the above could and should have been avoided and much else achieved. He and his team successfully marshaled America's great strengths to course correct and begin ushering in a new golden age for our country. To continue the United States on that path is the overarching purpose of President Trump's second administration and of this document. The questions before us now are, what should the United States want? What are our available means to get it? And how can we connect ends and means into a viable national security strategy? What should the United States want? What do we want overall? First and foremost, we want the continued survival and safety of the United States as an independent sovereign republic whose government secures the God-given natural rights of its citizens and prioritizes their well-being and interests. And you know what? If Richardson actually read this on air, because she didn't refer to anything, she's just like, oh, it's an overtly white supremacist document. If she actually just read this out loud, she would agree with everything. How could she not agree with it? She would say, oh, they're liars. Just like Brian Berletic would say that they're liars. He hates this so bad because he does not want the United States to be successful. We've shown clips of his warmongering, clips from the past of things that he has said where he's almost egging on other countries to come at the United States. And we can show that clip. I can find it. It's on my Telegram. I know I posted it there. I don't think I actually, I don't know if we actually did a show where I showed it. Okay. So you can't just look at his analysis and say like, oh yeah, well, he wants to say what people don't want to say, or he wants to say, you know, oh, because it goes against Trump supporters. Oh, it goes against Trump. That's why it's unpopular. That's why he gets so much criticism. But he don't get credit. He doesn't get criticism. Okay. He blocked his comment section on his X page. So you can't even comment. I don't think you can comment on his Telegram channel at all. So you can't comment on his YouTube, but you have to get through all of those paid comments that he has where it says like, you're the most smartest, brightest analyst in the entire world. What would we do without you, Brian? What would we do without you? You're so smart, blah, blah, blah. Like, why do people cheer on their demise? I don't understand that. It reminds me of the movie that we talked about, Tomorrowland. We're going to have to do a show on that too, where it's like, what kind of society like cheers on their demise, right? Why does fear sell? Why does negative news sell? Why does the doom scrolling consume people? Why do people love the black pill, even if they choke on it? And we can go into that. And we have, I mean, there's many theories that we could suggest. But to look at this and to criticize it, is because you're inherently unable to come to the terms with that the United States might become good, not on your watch and not on your terms. And that might be the most painful thing to come to terms with because of, for example, Brian's past. And the description we just see and how we described Richardson is because they want the success, they want the power, but they want it on their terms. They want the voter blocks, but they don't actually want to do the thing that people want because they want to govern over. They want to be in power. They want to be in control. And they think that people are not able to self-govern either. So there's that. We want to protect this country, its people, its territory, its economy, and its way of life from military attack and hostile foreign influence, whether espionage, predatory trade practices, drug and human trafficking, destructive propaganda and influence operations, cultural subversion, or any other threat to our nation. We want full control over our borders, over our immigration systems, and over transportation networks through which people come into our country legally and illegally. We want a world in which migration is not merely orderly, but one in which sovereign countries work together to stop rather than facilitate destabilizing population flows and have full control over whom they do and do not admit. We want a resilient national infrastructure that can withstand national disasters, resist and thwart foreign threats, and prevent or mitigate any events that might harm the American people or disrupt the American economy. No adversary or danger should be able to hold America at risk. We want to recruit, train, equip, and field the world's most powerful, lethal, and technologically advanced military to protect our interests, deter wars, and, if necessary, win them quickly and decisively with the lowest possible casualties to our forces. And we want a military in which every single service member is proud of their country and confident in their mission. We want the world's most robust, credible, and modern nuclear deterrent, plus next generation missile defenses, including a golden dome for the American homeland to protect the American people, American assets overseas, and American allies. We want the world's strongest, most dynamic, most innovative, and most advanced economy. The U.S. economy is the bedrock of the American way of life, which promises and delivers widespread and broad-based prosperity, creates upward mobility, and rewards hard work. Our economy is also the bedrock of our global position and the necessary foundation of our military. You know, Richardson and them, what they want to say that we are, anti-immigration, that they want to defame Stephen Miller and say that he is against brown people, that he wants to get rid of women in positions of power, and, not to mention that Trump's cabinet is full of women in positions of power. Susie Wells is the first female chief of staff. Tulsi Gabbard, everybody on his team there. But they want to talk about anti-immigration, related to, keeping out brown people when America is very diverse, just in general. Like, America is a very diverse country, and most people generally are fine with each other for the most part. So why can't we just say that that's how we are? And why does it have to be an anti-brown thing? Like, why can't we just say, whenever we're saying here that we want to preserve American interests, what do you think America is made up of? Is it predominantly, I think the majority is white, just because it fucking is. Like, it wasn't a nation of immigrants from Europe countries. Like, that shouldn't be so weird, and it shouldn't be wrong or bad. And I know you guys want to wrap in the Christian thing with it too, which is so offensive. But we are already like a melting pot. So when Trump is, and this document is talking about preserving American interests, he's talking about everybody that lives in this country. Yes, it's more white people than not, but it's still diverse. So you're just going to forget about that for everybody. Nobody's, and this is just the craziest thing, because so you look at, when you would look at like the Trump rallies or people that were out there, you do see people from all different walks of life. It's not just the No Kings protest, just old white people. Like, that's the irony of this, right? Is like, they're the ones that are crying white supremacy, but yet when you look at like their No Kings protests, it's like all old white people. So it's sort of strange. When, so most people, people that live here that are not white, that are American citizens, voted for Trump because they want to preserve American interests. You see, so that sort of coalition that you were describing along all, lot of different races and stuff. Okay, that's why Trump won. That's why he won all 7 swing states, including Iowa, and the popular vote. So that's why, because everybody, regardless of the color of their skin, as American citizens, want to preserve the rights and the resources afforded to American citizens. And we want an administration and a foreign policy to reflect that. We don't want our tax dollars being spent on foreign wars. We don't want our tax dollars spent on social programs in other countries. We don't want our tax dollars being spent on preserving democracy around the world. Okay? So the argument that this is a white supremacy document is just so absurd. And she didn't even give any examples either. That was just her slandering again still. So we'll just read a couple more pages of this. This has been sort of long, of course. I wanted to play one little short clip from Brian's thing. I what did I read here? We want the world's most robust, productive, and innovative energy sector, one capable not just of fueling American economic growth, but of being one of America's leading export industries in its own right. And then I guess if we go down, I mean, I would love to just, I guess we could do this on a different day. I know we're at the 2-hour mark here, because I feel like this would be really cool to just go through and just read. Not that you want to listen to me read it, but yeah, this is where Brian got all upset about here. Flexible realism. U.S. policy will be realistic about what is possible and desirable to seek in its dealings with other nations. We seek good relations and peaceful commercial relations with the nations of the world without imposing on them democratic or other social change that differs widely from their traditions and histories. Yeah, so they don't want to impose themselves on other countries. Like, how is that a bad thing? Oh, because they're lying, Nikki. They're just lying. We recognize and affirm that there is nothing inconsistent or hypocritical in acting according to such a realistic assessment or in maintaining good relationships with countries whose governing systems and societies differ from ours, even as we push like-minded friends to uphold our shared norms, furthering our interests as we do so. Yeah. Okay. So let's just go to, we're just going to share. Let's see here. This is hilarious. Oh my God. I get the sweats just looking at it. Okay. Do you guys see that? Okay. This is terrible. Terrible. Where's my, here we go. Okay. Ugh.
The United States has just released its national security strategy. I have read the entire document. It is approximately 33 pages long. As a matter of fact, it's right here. I will put the link to it in the video description.
As a matter of fact, it's right here. Just Control F, guys. It's right here. I can put the link in the...
Hello, and it begins with a foreword by U.S. President Donald J. Trump himself. Now, I have written an article for Beijing Review. I have already submitted it. I'm waiting for it to be published. When it is, I will post a video reading the article. It is a very short, concise summary of the national security strategy. Today, my intention is to do a deep dive. When both of these videos are out, I will link them to one another, and you can watch whichever one you want to, or you can watch both of them. If you're watching the shorter summary and you're in doubt of anything that I'm saying, you can come to the deep dive and I will show you the quotes where all of this is laid out explicitly. What is being laid out explicitly? Continuity of agenda, the Wolfowitz Doctrine. What is the Wolfowitz Doctrine? New York Times, 1992, U.S. strategy plan calls for ensuring no rivals develop. This is what the United States has pursued as its foreign policy, regardless of who is in the White House.
When this is okay. This article is from 1992. Okay, he quotes it every video. I don't watch all of it, but the videos that I have watched, he's quoted this specific video. I'm sorry, this specific article. Okay, it's right here. It's the 1992 New York Times article, whatever. Okay, so he's been doing that. Like, he's quoting these policy papers, these old policy papers, and he's saying continuity of government. So I just want to clarify that, like, is there an element of continuity of government? Yeah, obviously. Yes, obviously. But to act like, you know, plans don't change, rotation of elites don't occur. People actually change. Like 1992, it's 2025. That's like saying, oh, China is the same that it was 50 years ago. Russia is the same as it was 50 years ago. Iran is the same as it was 50 years ago. The United States is the same as it was 50 years ago. That's ridiculous. So, and especially with Trump, like, how can you be so ignorant and so blinded by the billion-dollar Trump derangement syndrome industry propaganda that you have so much disdain for not just the United States and your bad experiences that you've had in your life. Like, for sure, like, we all have bad experiences and we all have things that maybe we regret or we feel bad about, or that we're still, butthurt about, or that, maybe we haven't wrestled with or come to terms with. But that's a spiritual problem, dude. Like, that's a reckoning that has to happen on a spiritual level. And you can't externalize all of that. And you can't just dump all of your shit out onto everybody and call it an analysis and say that this has been the plan all along and that elites rule in unison and it's been continuity of government. Like, obviously we have continuity of government. Yes. In our country, our constitution and our government is set up differently than other countries. Like, and they've literally wrung out this elites class for so long. That's why we had this overt, conflict within the elite class that we saw that manifested like to this tipping point of Trump, to where it took an independent person with his own sphere of influence to come in through the Republican Party and do a populist movement based on big data analytics to like course correct, steer, and stop the death cult from driving us into nuclear war and ultimate destruction. Because they are in a breakaway civilization and they literally don't understand or have any frame of reference for how regular people actually live. They became so disconnected. That's why COVID was such a mess for them. They became so disconnected from how people actually lived. People were worse off than they actually thought that they were. They thought that they could just mandate everything and do this and that, and everybody would just fall in line. So this is just Brian's way of being able to just say again, like, this has been the plan this whole time. This is the Wolfowitz doctrine. This is the same thing. He's sweating in his chair. Like,
regardless of
he can't wait. And you know what? And it doesn't even matter what goes on in the world. Because if his theory, if his premise is that the U.S. is continuity of government and nothing's going to change, and it doesn't matter what the policy papers say moving forward, it only matters what they've said in the past. It only matters. Really, his narrative is really the only thing that matters. And it's continuity of government. It doesn't matter who the president is. It doesn't matter who the people are in the United States. It doesn't matter about any of this stuff. Nothing else matters except that the continuity of government. So all this other evidence to support the contrary doesn't matter, because the U.S. government is going to keep doing the same thing that it's always doing. And if it's talking about rapprochement with Russia, it's lying. But if it's talking about military strength against China, it's telling the truth. And he's never going to change his analysis, because he's going to keep beating the same drum, because he doesn't have to change it. So his job is actually pretty easy, isn't it? It's just to actually pull up this paper, every single video, and apply every single thing that the Trump administration does or says, Pete Hegseth, whatever, Marco Rubio, whatever, Venezuela, Yemen, whatever. He can just say, oh, doesn't matter what, you know what I mean? So now he's become the anti-realist. Remember how we were just talking about Blinken and what's his face going up there? Oh, what was his name? Matt, whatever. Going up there talking about like anti-realist rhetoric, right? This is the same thing, but it's flipped. So it's like actually having to ignore the reality of the situation to preserve your own narrative and your own perspective. And I would not be saying this if I haven't seen receipt after receipt after receipt of things in his own words, warmongering to get the U.S. into conflict, war with Iran, just misframing. It's not even like, oh, he's just critical of Trump. Oh, people that, people, the only reason that you would be upset with him is because he's critical of Trump. No. If that were the case, I know a handful of people that are critical of Trump. We're all critical of Trump, by the way. We just don't focus on it because we include nuance and, we're focusing on the other the things that are contributing to where we are today, right? I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. It's not just about things that I don't agree with Trump about. And I know a number of analysts that I would consider I like their content and I trust their perspective, or I think that I would agree with them. They say a number of things that I don't agree with. So this isn't just about harping on someone that I don't agree with. This is about patterns of behavior and tactics over and over and over again. Of, again, beating the war drum, making the United States out to be this big bad boogeyman all the time, no matter what. So then you can justify anything, right? This is actually connected with some of the stuff we were talking about earlier. When you victimize so much, what are you doing? You're validating the response, aren't you? So
Which party dominated Congress for decades, since the end of the Cold War? And it was the drafting of this strategy was supervised by Paul D. Wolfowitz, at that time the Pentagon's Undersecretary for Policy, which is why to this day it is still called the Wolfowitz Doctrine. And what is the Wolfowitz Doctrine? It is a doctrine that asserts that America's political and military mission in the post-Cold War era will be to ensure that no rival superpower is allowed to emerge in Western Europe, Asia, or the
Lincoln said that the post-Cold War era is over. He said that. So why are you still acting like this is not 1992 anymore? Why are you still acting like we're still in 1992? Or even still like 10 years ago? Like, this is a new day. It's been a new day. This isn't just like today's the new day. It's like, where have you been?
Territory of the former Soviet Union, basically anywhere on Earth. It's all about rejecting a collective approach. They do not want any nation or block of nations undermining U.S. primacy worldwide. The link to this article.
Russia was in a different place in 1992, weren't they? Russia was in a different place in 2014, weren't they? So why are you acting? Iran was in a different place. So why are you acting? We just saw all this shit with Iran. You said war with you were egging all that shit on. So what happened to it? Where are we now? Are we still there? No, we're not. Now it's Venezuela. Yes, no, yes, no. So why are you discrediting all these other countries by making the United States superior? You're criticizing the United States from acting superior, and you're criticizing Americans from thinking they're superior, but then you are also making the United States superior in the way that you're presenting it. You're acting like they're this all-powerful, acting unison block. What, to desensitize the way the other superpowers look at the United States, or what? Like, what is going on? Because you're discrediting the power. Why are you trying to make these other countries look weak? Why are you trying to make Russia look weak? Why are you trying to make Iran look weak? Why are you trying to make China look weak? Like, the Trump administration is saying, like, we don't want to interfere. And they're not just saying that. They've been doing that.
Will be in the video description below, and you can read it. Then you can read the national security strategy just published, and you tried to tell me how it differs in any shape, form, or way, except for a couple of throwaway quotes sprinkled in.
Okay, so it's not just the words that he says and his shitty analysis. It's this shitty attitude that he has also, okay? So do you see how arrogant he is? He has no ability to have self-awareness. He has no ability to course correct. He's so arrogant, and he's the one that, so he wants to victimize himself, and he wants to victimize everybody else in the world because the big bad United States is coming for global hegemony and domination. And then he'll be like, oh, you read it and you tell me how it's different, except for a few things. Like, who follows this shit? Like, who actually resonates with this? And we can go into who those people may be. Have you ever followed somebody and then you just were like, I'm not following them anymore? I have a handful of those people. That's what we've all just been through. What about celebrities? We all went through that, where we like, the Hollywood has gone through an entire transformation where we just would love to watch movies. And now you're like, oh, I can't stomach that person because they're horrible human beings whenever they open up their mouth and they start talking crap, right? Or whatever. Or we find out that they are involved in Epstein shit or whatever. So, you know, like, we all have watched content creators or actors or actresses our entire lives, and then all of a sudden realized, like, wow, I don't know what I saw in them, or like, wow, I don't feel that way anymore. Like, I'm different now. I've seen the light, or like, that message does not resonate with me anymore. And you really should grow out of your mentors in a way, like, not mentors, but like, you should grow out of your teachers, right? Like, you shouldn't, if you keep, that was the whole thing with the New Age community and the spiritual gurus and stuff. Like, you shouldn't have to keep going to the same person to get your fill, right? To get your fix. So that's the same thing with Brian. Like, people have to evolve as people, but his content stays the same. It's the same tone. It's the same perspective. It's the same everything. And so you have to evolve as an analyst. You have to evolve as a content creator. We're living, breathing people. Oh, sort of like, the ecosystem of the digestive system of our, the nervous system of our governments. Interesting. Not stagnant. Oh, people, spheres of influence, motivations, opportunities. Not stagnant, living, breathing, growing, evolving. So you have to be able to do that. And he doesn't. So it's only going to be a matter of time, I guess. But you can also pay YouTube to make comments under your channel. So if you want to go to, like I said, he's blocked his comment section in X and Telegram. This is the only place that you can comment. But if you see all the comments, people are like, it's all confirmation bias. The US doesn't want peace, never did, never will. Of course he loves that. This why there is no money for free education, healthcare. See, everybody just wants to complain. Everybody just wants to complain, and they just, for some reason, I don't know. Like, I would love to get a market. I might have to do that because I did that with Richardson, is to get a demographic market. How would you say it? Of like who the demographic is and who the audience is. I would be really curious. We could maybe go into that, I guess. But anyway.
And that everybody is cherry picking and clinging to while ignoring 99.9% of what is essentially.
Oh, so this is just like Richardson. So don't think critically. Don't be a thinking person and read the document. But it's mostly crap, except for a small part of it. It's mostly crap. And just listen to what I have to say. Just come back here and I'll explain it to you.
Repackaged Wolfowitz doctrine. So let's go through it. First of all, let me show you a particularly bad take. One of the worst takes I've seen so far, but it's still early. This is actually from Russian state media, RT. U.S. puts normalizing relations with Russia among core interests. The new national security strategy calls for a swift end to the Ukraine conflict and preventing further escalation in Europe. No, it doesn't, but I'll get into that in just a moment. It talks about the new strategy shifts the focus to the Western Hemisphere, to protecting the homeland. the borders and regional interests. It calls for resources to be redirected from distant theaters to challenges closer to home and urges NATO and European states to shoulder primary responsibility for their own defense. No, it doesn't, but I'll get into that in just a moment. The document also calls for an end to NATO expansion. Technically, it sort of does, but as I'm going to show you in just the opening forward by US President Donald J. Trump himself, the first page of the document, aside from the cover, he brags about how he himself has expanded NATO in just the less than a year he's been.
Brian, you know that what he's talking about, yes, he's expanded NATO through making other EU countries take on what they were supposed to take on anyway. He's been saying this since his first term.
Back in office, strengthening our military with $1 trillion of investment. Do you need to spend an unprecedented $1 trillion?
Who are you to ask how much the country should spend on its military? Like, yes, I understand we can be critical of our military. Oh, my Lord, we can be critical of our military. But that was at a time when our military was actively engaging in all of these different things. Okay, let's say that we are, we just spent all this. We just gave everything away. We don't have anything. We just gave everything away to free Ukraine, to Israel, to everybody. So, yes, I know the argument of why does our military budget have to be so big? And yes, obviously, we don't want, but they're saying, at one point you have to look at both sides. You have to say, they're saying that this is only for, preserving, and you can't predict the future either. You can't predict. And based on everything that we've just been through and based on all of that, you cannot cry continuity of government and say that everything's been the same and everybody's the same and Trump's the same and all this stuff.
Dollars more than any other one-time investment.
What were you going to say? Were you going to say more than any other country? How much does China spend on their military budget? I'm just curious. I don't know. I don't know that answer. Because is that what you were going to say? And now you're saying more than any other time in history. Because we don't have any fucking equipment, Brian. You know this.
In the U.S. military to withdraw to the Western Hemisphere and mind your own business? Certainly not. It's just that at face value, this idea that the U.S. is withdrawing to the Western Hemisphere and not continuing, even expanding its pursuit of primacy worldwide, falls apart.
Brian, no. It doesn't, honey. No, it doesn't. If you even take it at face value, you're not taking it at face value. That's the thing, is that you're not taking it at face value. I'm going to look up and see how much China spends on their military.
What else does he brag about?
Oh, he's so upset, dude. He's such a hater, bro. He's such a hater.
We built our alliances and got our allies to contribute more to our common defense, including a historic commitment from NATO countries to raise defense spending from 2% to 5% of their GDP. What is the purpose of NATO? Did the US reduce its contributions to NATO? No. It simply got European and non-European members of NATO.
And how's that going? How's it going that other European countries are putting up more money from NATO? Is that going to last long? Or how long is it going to last? How is the EU doing, Brian?
To spend more themselves on NATO.
Are they? Are they spending more? Have the checks been cashed? Has the money been deposited?
They are expanding NATO. You spend more on NATO, you will be expanding NATO, if not in terms of territory, in terms of capabilities. What else does he brag about in just this opening forward of the National Security Strategy paper? He brags about striking Iran. He also talks about drug cartels and savage foreign gangs being designated as foreign terrorist organizations, him creating a false pretext to wage war, at least against Venezuela, but also to militarize and overrun the Western Hemisphere. And they're doing it supposedly to fight narco-terrorism, but they will admit in the paper it's actually about preventing Russia and China from working with these nations in Latin America.
Is that what it says in the paper? Oh, wait a second. Okay. So as of 2025, China's official military budget is approximately 246 billion. However, estimates of actual spending, including off-budget items, suggest it could be as high as 318 billion or more. So the US is going, so Trump, you've already established he's a bragger. You already say he's a bragger. He's going to want to have more military expenditures. He's going to want to have a bigger military budget than China. Like, dude, get it together. Come on.
America. It's about preventing Latin America from having an independent foreign policy, preventing them from.
Hold on. China's military spending overview, official defense budget, 2025. Oh, approximately. Okay, sorry.
Picking who they work with and how they work with them. That's what the paper is going to admit, and I will read it
Oh my God,
to you. Now let's continue.
I'm not Brian's target market, by the way. Okay, so I don't know.
A list of quotes. They're not in any particular order per se, but let's just go through them. The next one is about a number of policies that are.
He hates peace through strength.
If you read them and you read what is actually on the paper rather than read what you wish it said, it's very obvious this is continuity of agenda. This is the continued Wolfowitz doctrine laid out at the end of the Cold War in the 1990s. Okay. So peace through strength. Strength is the best deterrent. Countries or other actors sufficiently deterred from threatening American interests will not do so.
He is so antagonizing. Like, what are you thinking? Like, how is it? Okay, so you talk with this, what is the word? Oh my God. Whiny. That's not the word I'm looking for. It's not whiny. But yet the US is supposed to be big and bad, but yet you're dressing them down in this whole thing, acting like they're a bunch of schmucks. And it's like, oh, what else is he bragging about? Like, so why do you take Trump and the US so seriously, but yet not take them seriously? You know, like, you can't have it both ways, I don't think.
Oh, American interests. We all know what that means. It doesn't mean the United States within its borders and the interests contained within. It means all of the things well beyond American borders, things that are actually inside other people's borders. No,
it's the opposite of that. They already said that they don't want to, they already said that, and that's already part of the big data analytics. It's been Trump's platform this whole time. Like, everybody already knows that. Okay. And the United States has to invest in itself if it's going to sustain. The problem here, and what I would share with Brian's audience, is that you may agree. This is so funny because it's like, well, you don't like him, Nikki, because you disagree with him. And it's like, people like him because they agree with him, but they don't. Are they also? Did they hate on America? Did they understand that he's coming from a American haterism perspective? He doesn't want the United States to succeed. He doesn't want Americans to succeed. He wants the whole thing to come crashing down. He doesn't want them to have a comeback story. He doesn't want living situations for Americans living in the United States to get better. Because then that would mean that Trump is doing something right, or he's doing something good. The United States can't be good because they're the worst and the most powerful. They can't be good. So Trump can't do anything good. Nothing good can come out of it. So no, Trump doesn't have the best interest. He's not invested in the people of his country. Not like President Xi, does he have his country's best interest at heart? Yeah, a lot of people think so. And you could say so. You could make the case for it. And I'm not either here nor there, because I stay in my lane, but I don't talk about China at all. So it sounds like he pulled a lot of people, however much of the population up out of poverty and increased the middle class. And you could argue the same thing about Russia. You know, Russia's going to do Russia. Iran's going to do Iran. Like, let everybody do what they're going to do. Let the United States also do what it's going to do. But to act like that our president, or a decent president, or a successful one, doesn't have his people's best interest at heart. You haven't been following the Trump story. You haven't been following MAGA, and you haven't been following what's been happening to people inside the United States for the last 10 years. I think you're still stuck in 1992, back in that article. I think you're still stuck in all of these things. But to just dismiss Americans, that they're not entitled to their own domestic policy, that they're not entitled to, a Bobby Kennedy coming in and saying, you know what, we're not going to give vaccines. We're not going to give the hepatitis B vaccines to babies. And the elite's still fighting it. And moms and dads are still going to have to fight it. That's just one example. Americans are still fighting their own battles every single day. They voted for Donald Trump, and you're not going to lie to them and gaslight them that they didn't do it for the reasons that they did it for, and that there's not still that potentiality. For the most part, he's done what he said he was going to do. For the most part, there's been a lot of hangups. There's been a lot of things that people are unhappy with. There's been a lot of problems, but for the most part, we're still holding out. And he's only been in office less than a year. Like everybody, Trump's polling numbers, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you can make it all about midterms, but Trump is he going to run again? It's like we haven't even been through the first year yet. So yes, a lot of things still have to happen. Absolutely. People wanted things to happen quicker, of course. But to straight up lie to people and say, oh, they don't actually want to preserve, good things they don't want to focus on making the country better. They're just using that as a ruse.
And they're near abroad. And so I'm going to show you where the United States says the Western Hemisphere is off limits. Monroe Doctrine. Nobody is allowed to do business in the Western Hemisphere unless we approve of it. But we're also going to do business everywhere else in the world. And if anyone tries to stop us, peace through strength, we're going to deter them from threatening our interests. In other words, we are going to move in on these nations, and we are going to prevent them. We are going to threaten them to such an extent they will not even dare defend themselves. That is what the whole deterrence over the island province of Taiwan is all about, deterring China from asserting its internationally recognized sovereignty over Taiwan. It's sovereignty over Taiwan that even the United States recognizes through its one China policy, which I've talked about endlessly for years now. That's what they mean by deterring other nations from threatening American interests. The U.S. is imposing itself on others, and they want to deter that nation from trying to defend themselves and obviously prevent them from successfully doing so. Let's move on to the next. Predisposition to non-interventionism. Sounds great. A predisposition to non-interventionism. Many people voted for President Donald Trump because he said he was going to end all of these foreign wars. All of this foreign intervention, being the world's policeman. We've heard every president throughout the 21st century make this promise.
No, Biden didn't make that promise, sir.
While campaigning, and then immediately break the promise once in office. President Trump is...
No, Biden wanted to stem Russia aggression.
No exception. He did it during his first term in office. He has now done it in his second term in office. He's bragging about bombing Iran and starting a war with Venezuela.
He didn't start a war with Venezuela. And what happened with the bombing in Iran, Brian? Have you ever talked about that? About what did happen?
The opening forward of the document. Let's read about non-interventionism according to the Trump administration. And it's not to pick on the Trump administration. Every single administration has done this. The Biden administration.
You are picking on the Trump administration, honey. You are.
Administration did this. Oh, the Obama administration did this. The Bush Jr. administration did this. In the Declaration of Independence, America's founders laid down a clear preference for non-interventionism in the affairs of other nations and made clear the basis. Just as all human beings possess God-given equal natural rights, all nations are entitled by the laws of nature and nature's God to a separate and equal station with respect to one another. For a country whose interests are as numerous and diverse as ours, rigid adherence to non-interventionism is not possible. So, yes, you voted for President Trump for non-interventionism. All nations are equal and entitled to their own sovereignty and to protect their own interests. But our interests as America are so numerous and diverse and also far afield beyond our own borders, it's just not possible for us. The functioning of the modern day American empire requires us to be everywhere and impose ourselves.
I'm not sure that's what that says. I have to go to where is that at? Hold on. God. So terrible. What did I do? What did I do? Really getting our money's worth today, guys. Really getting our money's worth today. Okay, what page is this? What is it on? Page 13? Click, click. Oh my God, please turn down his nasal line. Thank you. Thank you. I can't take it. It's terrible. It's so bad. It's so bad. Okay. Wait, hold on. Wait.
Yes.
Let's do this real quick.
You voted for President Trump for non-interventionism. All nations are equal and entitled to their own sovereignty and to protect their own interests.
Okay. Okay. So what did he say? He said it's on page, listen here, 13. Right? Or is it on, oh, peace. Okay. So predisposition to, so let's just read it without our Brian lens. We're just going to read it here. It says, in the Declaration of Independence, America's founders laid down a clear preference for non-interventionism in the affairs of other nations and made clear the basis. Just as all human beings possess God-given equal natural rights, all nations are entitled by the laws of nature and nature's God to a separate and equal station with respect to one another. For a country whose interests are as numerous and diverse as ours, rigid adherence to non-interventionism is not possible. Yet this predisposition should set a high bar for what constitutes a justified intervention. They're saying that we should have a high bar for justified intervention. This is what they've been saying this whole time. This is what Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio and JD Vance have been saying this whole time, is that there should be a high bar for what constitutes as justified intervention. Do you want, and the answer is yes, he does want. He wants the United States to lay down. They're not going to do that. They're not going to lay down. So this is the next step. This is the next best step. It's a very good one. It's pretty, different than the way the Biden administration handled things. It's very different than the Biden State Department. So they're saying that we're not going to be non-intervention. We're not going to say we're never having an intervention because we don't want to be liars. And we're not saying that. I'm not saying that I'm never going to raise my voice. I'm not saying that I'm never going, I mean, like they're saying that we want, if that if it's justified, we need to be clear on this because we've been willy-nilly in the past and we want to be clear on it. Oh. Ridiculous.
But our interests as America are so numerous and diverse and also far afield beyond our own borders. It's just not possible for us. The functioning of the modern day American empire requires us to be everywhere and impose our.
That's not what it said. That's not what it said. We just read it. You can read it yourself and then use your own thinking to interpret what it says and just think about it.
Cells on everyone, and we will continue doing so. That is what they're telling you. How else can you interpret that? And then this one here. Yet this predisposition should set a high bar for what constitutes a justified intervention. And yet the Trump administration, like the Biden, Obama, and Bush administrations before it, is openly fabricating a pretext to start a war with Venezuela already.
No. They're already openly, just like every other administration, fabricate. So, but have we gone to war with Venezuela? So if we're doing continuity of government and every other administration before has threatened war with Venezuela, and we're doing continuity of government and no other president has actually gone to war with Venezuela. So then if we're doing continuity of government, we're threatening war with Venezuela, then it sounds like then we're not going to actually go to war with Venezuela.
Fabricated a pretext to launch a war against Iran, continues to.
Fabricated to launch a war to Iran, nothing to do with Israel, nothing to do with that whole thing and the war and all of the, so nothing to do with that. And do you think Trump escalated war with Iran or de-escalated war with Iran? Or did he de-escalate by escalating? I don't know. I
lie about nations like Russia and China, North Korea, and anyone else who refuses to capitulate.
Trump has spoken out of all the presidents. I mean, he's spoken the most positive to, he does. He'll say stuff, for optics reasons, and he'll say stuff, for rhetoric reasons and such. But he has said, and that's why they call him a Putin puppet, right? Because he speaks positively about President Putin and President Xi, and about Kim Jong-un too. So you can't have it both ways.
And be subordinated by the United States. Next, flexible realism. As you can see, these quotes that I'm reading and explaining to you are many times more numerous, longer, and more detailed than the ambiguous handful of quotes you see others quoting and clinging to try to portray this national security strategy as some sort of sea change.
Oh, okay. So Brian feels as though he is the voice. He is a teardrop in the ocean voice, that he feels that he needs to be the voice of reason, right? That everybody is saying that this document is a sea change, that everybody is saying that this is okay. So he feels as though it's his obligation then to take this neurotic, absurd stance because everybody else is being so, and I would disagree because I watch a lot of different types of media. I watch, the anti-imperialism media sphere, obviously the Richardson Democratic media sphere, the geopolitics, financial sphere. And I would say that people, the DD geopolitics sphere, I would say that a lot of people take this sort of like haterism angle. I don't think you're doing I don't think you're doing the Lord's work, Brian, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't think you're doing that. I think that you could go on a number of podcasts and people would love to just go down this rabbit hole with you. So I don't think that you are doing, again, dissident work, or that you are calling out things that a lot of other people aren't calling out. Like, I don't think you're uncovering anything. Sorry.
In U.S. foreign policy. So, flexible realism. U.S. policy will be realistic about what is possible and desirable to seek in its dealings with other nations. We seek good relations and peaceful commercial relations with the nations of the world without imposing on them democratic or other social change that differs widely from their traditions and histories. What do they mean by that? Are they talking about Russia and China? We shouldn't be enemies with Russia and China just because they have a different way of looking at things and running their country. No, they're talking about
Wait, what did he say? What is he talking about?
To try to portray this national security strategy as some sort of sea change in U.S. foreign policy. So, flexible realism.
Okay, so we just read this. U.S. policy will be realistic about what is possible and desirable. So he doesn't say anything about Russia or China. We just read this. We recognize and affirm that there is nothing inconsistent or hypocritical in acting according to such a realistic assessment or in maintaining good relationships with countries whose governing systems and societies differ from ours. Yes, we're not going to impose ourselves on other countries and their way of living, and we're not going to do, the LGBT stuff. Okay, whatever.
U.S. policy will be realistic about what is possible and desirable to seek in its dealings with other nations. We seek good relations and peaceful commercial relations with the nations of the world without imposing on them democratic or other social change that differs widely from their traditions and histories. What do they mean by that? Are they talking about Russia and China? We shouldn't be enemies with Russia and China just because they have a different way of looking at things and running their country.
No, he's also talking about Iran and North Korea and Saudi Arabia and Palestine and Israel. I mean, I think he's probably talking about all the countries, I think.
No, they're talking about all of the extremists that they have supported, sponsored, and installed into power, especially in the Middle East, and how President Trump built a large segment of his following up on Islamic extremism the U.S. itself created, runs, and benefits from, who is first and foremost killing actual Muslims all around the globe.
Oh, you know what?
He's trying.
First of all, cry me a river, Brian. Okay, cry me a river. First of all, okay. I see you're getting all self-righteous here. I'm not going to actually disagree with you on some of the things that you said there. I mean, yeah, obviously, the fear-mongering related to Islam is a real thing. The threat and things that have actually happened, or there's other things to be considered about. It's a very tumultuous subject, and you could definitely dive into both sides. It sounds like you're taking the direction of like this self-righteous, like, oh, they're funding the terror. Yeah, we know. Okay. And Islam, and they're killing Muslims, and yeah, I see what you're saying, but I don't know exactly what it is specifically that you're talking about, like imposing. We're not going to change. What are you saying? I'm sorry. What are you saying?
Trying to explain why President Trump and his whole administration, why they created this boogeyman and now they're openly doing business with them, why they have an Al-Qaeda leader in the White House.
Okay, yeah, that's what this, okay, good. Yeah, I know. I mean, it is a thing. It's a whole thing, but, and I definitely don't want to speak to it. And you probably actually, I'm not sure how much you actually should speak to it either. No offense. A lot of people speak to it. And it's sort of, it is a thing, like, for sure. I mean, it is a thing, and people that have been following along understand it and feel very questioning it and betrayed. And there's a lot of pearl clutching and histrionic related to it. And a lot of bad feelings about different things, about what happened in Syria. Yeah, I think that's a big issue for a lot of people. So I I understand your frustration. I can see how you would be frustrated. You know, for it, like, that's one example. Definitely. That's definitely one example that you could kind of go down and use that. And it doesn't, the optics it doesn't look good. It's definitely a point of contention. And, a lot of people have a big, strong opinion about it, of it going different ways, but you can also look and see what other countries are doing too, related to that. And, I'm not sure exactly that's specifically what they're talking about in this specific paragraph.
House hugging President Trump just
Yeah,
after having a $10 million bounty removed from his head,
yes,
and
I mean,
having led an organization listed by the U.S. State Department as a foreign terrorist organization. That's what that means, flexible realism. I know we told you they're bad guys, and we scared you, and we manipulated you by foisting them up as a boogeyman, but they're our boogeyman, and we need to do business with them. We don't have any time to play make-believe anymore. We're down to the wire. We're running out of time to reassert ourselves worldwide. We have to use these terrorists no matter how bad it looks. Flexible realism. And
Brian, I understand your frustration. I do in this specific regard. Like, yes, I understand. Like, I think it's warranted. I think your frustration is warranted in this specific. And if this is your axe to grind, and you want to make everything be about this specific axe to grind, as well as other axes to grind, and you're sort of doing that whole thing, and that's where your pain lies. And that's, like, you know, where you want to really pull in as evidence to support. I can see why your analysis looks the way that it does. So I think that that's what we're doing sort of here. And I think that people that are locked into those narratives and those stories, I can see how they would get locked into everything else that you're saying, because you're using those points. And I you know, it's not unwarranted. Like, yes, I definitely see that. But you have to have emotional intelligence here, and you have to and you can be definitely pissed off and frustrated and stuff, but, like, you can't have that be, like, part of your presentation in a way. Like, yeah, you can be pissed off and stuff, but I'm not going to go.
I've actually seen Trump supporters try to rationalize the serial betrayal of President Trump's campaign promises by citing realism, or as it's being called here, flexible realism.
Yeah, you just so most people, you do this where you, like, talk to people that voted for Trump. Like, you talk to Trump supporters with this, like, disdain. Like, you're like, people voted for Trump, and there's, you know, you basically talk down to people that voted for Trump, and then, but, like, you're somehow trying to coerce them into, like, seeing the light, into seeing, like, how you see things, and, like, seeing the light. And you've done this a lot throughout your different videos, where you, like, talk down to MAGA, and you talk down. So I don't even know who you're talking to. I honestly I don't know who you're talking to when you talk like that. But I will say that people that create content on the internet that have been anti-imperialist know what you're talking about. They haven't mainstreamed the Syria conversation in a way where, like, regular people that live in the world, in the United States, understand what you're talking about. So, like, there is an awareness there. People understand what's going on. And again, you might have, like, Dave Smith, who is obviously a libertarian, huge podcast and stuff, and he may talk about stuff about that. You may have, like, what's the schmuck's face, Ben Norton or whatever his name is. You may have, again, these, like, anti-imperialist, Trump derangement syndrome people on the internet talk about stuff, but nobody that is talking about things that are going on in the world, and domestically, and with, again, that sense of nuance and realism, actually are harping on that. So I just think it's, again, like I can see how you're pissed off about it for sure. I can see how you're pissed off, and I can see how other people are pissed off too. But if that's your axe to grind, it's not the majority.
Primacy of nations, right here, right? The next one, primacy of nations. The world's fundamental political unit is and will remain the nation states. It is natural and just that all nations put their interests first and guard their sovereignty. The world works best when nations prioritize their interests. So the United States will put our own interests first, and in our relations with other nations, encourage them to prioritize their own interests as well. So like Ukraine, just keep fighting our endless proxy war against Russia to the last Ukrainian. That is clearly in your best interest.
Nobody's saying that. Democrat Party media and politicians and elites are saying that, bitch. Okay. So that's the problem, that you don't want to differentiate. You want to act like everybody in the United States government is the same. Everybody from past administrations is the same. All the media is the same. Everybody's on the same page, and everybody's doing this like whole global domination thing. It would have just been easier for them to do the global domination thing, right? But reality caught up with them. That's what it said in the intro, actually. That's what we read from President Trump said, is that elites miscalculated America's appetite, or however they said it.
Europe, go from 2% of your GDP spent on NATO to 5% of your GDP spent on NATO. That's clearly in your best interest to fight America's proxy wars.
He doesn't think it's in their best interest. That's why he's doing it. It's what NATO doctrine says. It's what nobody's paid their fair share. He's making a point, dude. You know this. He's making a point. Everybody needs to pay their fair share. They're going to end up not paying their fair share because they can't.
And to maintain American primacy over the globe, including over Europe. That is clearly in your best interest. Japan, become more aggressive.
So he's lying when he says this, but he's telling the truth when he says this, right? That's the whole thing for him. He just picks and chooses. He cherry picks.
Aggressive in confronting your largest and most important trading partner, China. The Philippines, you do so as well. Tear up all the infrastructure China was helping you build, and instead invest in missile bases to point our missiles that we sell to you at a profit at your largest trading partner, again, China.
And I'm not trying to compare it to children, but like from a parent's perspective, like you have to say things to your kids. You know they're not going to listen, but you have to say it. Like this is standard operating procedure for like any institution. Like we have to say these things. It's like anywhere. It's like the discipline policy for the public school gets voted on, and they're like, this is going to be our discipline policy. Like they know they're not going to be able to enforce any of that shit. They know that. But like they have to have a policy. They have to have a comprehension plan. Like there has to be a document. Tim Kirby was just saying like Americans love their documents and stuff. Actually, that's funny. Exactly. Americans love their documents, but like, you know, so just because you said something to your kid doesn't mean they're going to listen, and that you just have to say it. Like, you know, these are the things that we have to say, right? So there's like you know what I mean? Like there's a read between the lines. Read between the lines. That is reality versus this fairy tale that they're sketching out here. We stand for the sovereign rights of nations against the sovereignty sapping incursions of the most intrusive transactional organizations like what? Like NATO that the US created and directs, and President Trump helped expand the funding for. And for reforming those institutions so that they assist rather than hinder individual sovereignty and further American interests. So it's not about everyone's interests, it's about American interests. Brian, this is the American document. What do you want it to say? He's the American president. This is the American administration. What do you want it to say? Of course it's going to be in the best interest of the Americans. What are you talking about?
And so what this actually is, and I'm going to show you elsewhere where in this paper, it bulldozes the sovereignty of other nations, especially Latin America. It is saying Latin America cannot work with nations outside of the hemisphere. So how does that add up with primacy of nations? So what are they actually saying here? Primacy of national sovereignty for me.
Wait, did he just this is so grotesque, bro. I can't even deal with it, dude. I can't even take it. What are we doing here? What are we doing? Did he edit that? Like what? Hold on. I can't even take it. I can't even take it. I might need to refill my drink.
So that they assist rather than hinder individual sovereignty and further American interests.
All right.
So it's not about everyone's interests. It's about American interests. And so what this actually is, and I'm going to show you elsewhere where in this paper, it bulldozes the sovereignty of other nations, especially Latin America. It is saying Latin America cannot work with nations outside of the hemisphere. So how does that add up with primacy of nations? So what are they actually saying here? Primacy of national sovereignty for me, not for thee. That's what they're saying. And that's all this paper is justifying why the US gets to do whatever it wants while steamrolling everybody else's right to do likewise. That's all this paper is.
So you're complaining about America saying they're sovereign by complaining that their other countries aren't going to be sovereign. So are other countries sovereign? I'm confused. If America is saying we're taking our hands off of the wheel and we would like other countries, historically we've been very involved and now we're not going to be as involved. That's a bad thing. Do you then are other countries children then? And they can't take care of themselves then? You know what I'm like? And
again, it's simply a reiteration of the Wolfowitz doctrine as per the early 1990s. Here's another one. Balance of power. And this is where it becomes incredibly obvious that it is just the Wolfowitz doctrine continued. U.S. strategy plan calls for ensuring no rivals develop. The United States cannot allow any nation to become so dominant that it could threaten our interests. We will work with allies and partners to maintain global and regional balance of power to prevent the emergence of dominant adversaries, not to prevent the emergence of a...
Hold on, I'm going to read this. The United States cannot allow any nation to become so dominant that it could threaten our interests. Well, XF has talked about this, about the interests of countries to not get to be so big, because inevitably that's where they could get into trouble. And he's gone into that on a few occasions. I'm not going to screw it up by trying to explain it. But the multipolar world is to where, yes, there's not a superpower, and that's beneficial to not just other countries, but to the country itself to not become all powerful, to become the most powerful, because there's trade-offs to a country becoming more powerful than other countries. There's benefits to that, and there's negatives to that. So the United States cannot allow any nation to become so dominant that it could threaten our interests. Yes, that's true. But what is also being said there is that any nation that becomes so dominant, it actually becomes a threat to itself. We will work with allies and partners to maintain global and regional balances of power to prevent the emergence of dominant adversaries. As the United States rejects the ill-fated concept of global domination for itself, which is what I just said, we must prevent the global and in some cases even regional domination of others. So yeah, so you could argue that that's their, first of all, the Americans don't need a piece of paper to do whatever the fuck they want, just like any other country. Okay. So, that's the same thing with all these policy papers. It's just like, it is inevitably just a piece of paper. Like they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, and suffer the consequences of what they're doing or not doing, just like any other country, just like us as individuals, just like anything. So to act like this is this document that everybody in the country, everybody in the world is going to sign, and we're all going to agree. This isn't a fucking peace treaty, Brian. This is just like, this is exactly what they're saying. And they're not going to then use it. They're not going to like go to the balance of power line item on page 33 of the NSS and be like, oh, well, you are becoming more powerful than us. And so you're becoming more powerful. So we have to intervene because you are. That's the same thing as that they've done without a piece of paper for so long. So, and what NATO is. But so yes, so you could argue that's continuity of government, but you're reading into it that way. They don't need this piece of paper to like, they're not rewriting their global domination policy. I know you're making the argument in the case that they will, and obviously we will see, but what has the last year shown? And you want to try and argue, Venezuela, like, what are you even, where is your evidence to support that they've shown that that's what they've been doing? Oh, because they changed the Department of Defense to the Department of War. This isn't a precursor or predicate to anything that wasn't already there before. This does not mean wasting blood and treasure to curtail the influence of all the world's great and middle powers. Yeah, so what they're saying is that we're not going to do others. We're not going to do bankers' wars for them. I'm interpreting it that way, aren't I? So nowhere did it say, but like, no, we're not going to go to war. Sounds like this is a predicate for we're not going to go to war for other people, other countries' interests. We're not going to be dragged in to other wars because of the interests of others. We're not going to be Team America. That we're not going to use our resources. We're not going to outsource all of our weapons. We're not going to outsource our men. We're not going to do that. The outsized influence of larger, richer, and stronger nations is a timeless truth of international relations. The outsized influence of larger, richer, yes. The reality sometimes entails working with partners to thwart ambitions that threaten our joint interests. Okay, so you want to say positive things about President Xi. You want to say positive things about President Putin. Okay, well, what if, I don't know, what if somebody did come in there? Or what if there was a situation, right? It's all about perspective. And yes, you could say like, oh, they'll just make that up and use it. Like, yeah, of course that's an option. It's been the way that they've done things in the past. So like, yeah, you could say that it's going to be the way in the future. Like, yeah, I mean, you could say that. This has been a long ruse then, hasn't it? And then, and you know what? The triangulation of like these powers that they play these games with each other and this optics and stuff, like, yeah, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know the back channels. We don't know the relationships and the, we're going to work together because they're fucking the shit up, and we're going to work together to, position ourselves to where they, have to figure out a better way or a different way or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely strategic ambiguity for sure, but that's nothing new. And I don't think it's I don't think we need all of this, actually, is what you're saying, not this document. This document is fine. Are you going to talk about the pro-American worker party?
Dominant player. The United States already dominates all of these regions. They want to prevent anyone else from surpassing the United States and pushing the United States out of regions of the planet that are literally on the other side of Earth from where the US is actually located on a map. Okay, this is the Wolfowitz doctrine right here. As the United States rejects the ill-fated concept of global domination for itself, we must prevent the global and, in some cases, even regional domination of others. And how are you doing that unless you're absolutely everywhere, or your proxies are working on your behalf absolutely everywhere to prevent any other nation from rising? How does that?
I think there's shit going on in Thailand, and I think that he just the way that he complained about USAID, and he just has problems with like things that aren't Trump, that have to do with NGOs and funding sources and what's the word I'm looking for? Enmeshing and oh my God, what is the word I'm looking for? How long has it been? We've been here for what, 3 hours now? Entangled in entanglements in other countries, dude. Like, but the other countries can be held accountable too. Like all governments, I mean, everybody is out for themselves in different ways. So like, you know, to act like there's just like good guys and bad guys, and you know, there's not people from other countries that are like taking handouts and doing deals with, you know, the deep state or whatever, that has nothing to do with Trump. You know, maybe that's where your pain lies, Brian. Maybe that's what you're talking about.
How does that work? So just in the same sentence, they contradict themselves. And again, this is what the U.S. has always been doing, pursuing global domination. And it still does. And it's openly telling you by preventing any.
I don't think it's openly telling. I think it's definitely the opposite of openly telling us. I think it's being ambiguous.
Anyone else from dominating the planet, and the U.S. being everywhere to make sure that
he doesn't have any background in any of this stuff either. It's just all based on his writing and his experience and stuff, which is fine. Like everybody to each their own. But I think the words that he's using and the way that he's describing things, people like are giving him more credit, because this is a very like layman's interpretation. You know, it's like whiny, but it's like very layman's interpretation. There's nothing analytical about it.
no other nation can rise up in any region of the planet, it is inferring that the U.S. itself will dominate the planet. So it's just common sense, and I don't understand why people can't see this. I think they can see this, they just don't want to. This does not mean wasting blood and treasure to curtail.
Who are you so mad about that can't see? Because like everybody that is in your comment section, everybody that jumps into our comment sections, they want to talk about the freaking Hegseth speech in February. They want to talk about the freaking Rand Corporation policy papers. So like, I just don't know who you're mad at. Who are you mad at? The people that aren't overtly anti-Trump? Like, who do you think? Oh no, the people don't get it. Who do you want? Not everybody can be anti-American, Brian.
The influence of all of the world's great and middle powers. The outsized influence of larger, richer, and stronger nations is a timeless truth of international relations. This reality sometimes entails working with partners to thwart ambitions that threaten our joint interests. So we're not going to spend blood and treasure doing this. Our partners are going to do it.
That's not what they mean, Brian. That's not what they mean. I think you watched one too many mystery shows.
And it actually announces a burden sharing network. I will get to the burden sharing network here in just a moment. And I will show you how it is simply an extension of what U.S. Secretary of Defense, now U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, laid out back in February in regards to the ongoing U.S. proxy war against Russia in Ukraine. I will show you that. Oh, as a matter of fact, that's the next one on the list. Right here, burden sharing and burden shifting. And I just want to refresh everyone's memory. This was Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's opening remarks. This was in Brussels. It is a directive that the U.S. gave Europe and told them, you're going to continue the U.S. proxy war against Russia and Ukraine. For us, you will divert more resources into doing so.
Oh, dude,
you will even send.
This is his beloved speech, bro. This is the beloved speech from February, Pete Hegseth. Okay, let's just read it real quick. And I appreciate the opportunity to share President Trump's approach to the war in Ukraine. We are at, as you said, Mr. Secretary, a critical moment. As the war approaches its 30th anniversary, our message is clear. The bloodshed must stop and this war must end. President Trump has been clear with the American people and with many of your leaders that stopping the fighting and reaching an enduring peace is a top priority. He intends to end this war by diplomacy and bringing both Russia and Ukraine to the table, and the U.S. Department of Defense will help achieve this goal. We will only end this devastating war and establish a durable peace by coupling allied strength with a realistic assessment of the battlefield. We want, like you, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine, but we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective. Chasing this illusionary goal will only prolong the war and cause more suffering. A durable peace for Ukraine must include robust security guarantees to ensure the war that will not begin again. This must not be Minsk 3. That said, the United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement. Said any security guarantee must be backed by capable European and non-European troops. What's the problem? Like, yeah, he didn't say everything perfectly, but what's the problem?
European and non-European troops into Ukraine to force a freeze on Russia. Minsk.
Hold on. That said, the United States, okay. Instead, any security guarantee must be backed by capable European. Any security guarantee must be backed by capable European and non-European troops. How's that going to happen? Who's doing that? Capable European and non-European troops. Who's going to do that? If these troops are deployed as peacekeepers to Ukraine at any point, they should be deployed as part of a non-NATO mission. You understand? He's saying, you guys are now going to be the big boys and you guys are going to have to figure this out. And it has to be a non-NATO mission. Isn't that what I'm reading this? And they should not covered under Article 5. There also must be robust international oversight of the line of contact. But good luck with that. To further enable effective diplomacy and drive down energy prices that fund the Russian war machine, President Trump is unleashing American energy production and encouraging other nations to do the same. Lower energy prices coupled with more effective enforcement of energy sanctions will help bring Russia to the table. Big whoop-de-doo. Safeguarding European security must be an imperative for European members of NATO. As part of this, Europe must provide the overwhelming share of future lethal and non-lethal aid to Ukraine. Europe must provide the overwhelming. What is the problem, Brian?
3.0 essentially. And we are going to pivot to China in the Pacific, recognizing the reality of scarcity and making the resourcing trade-offs.
I'm sorry. I missed that part. This is what Chaps Brian's asked. Okay. The United States faces consequential threats to our homeland. We must and we are focusing on security of our own borders. We also face a peer competitor. We face a peer competitor. A peer competitor. Does he use the word adversary? No. He said we face a peer competitor. A peer, an equal competitor. What is wrong with that? In the communist China with the capability and intent to threaten our homeland and core national interests in the Indo-Pacific. The U.S. is prioritizing deterring war with China in the Pacific, recognizing the reality of scarcity and making the resourcing trade-offs to ensure deterrence does not fail. Deterrence cannot fail for all of our sakes. So they're saying that they need to defer. They need to defer to protecting themselves against China, and that's why they need to get out of the war in Ukraine. That's interesting. And a peer competitor. Like, yeah, this is just like talking shit, Brian. This is just like, you know, like before a game, you know, just like going back and forth.
To ensure deterrence does not fail. We can establish a division of labor that maximizes our comparative advantages in Europe and Pacific, respectively. Okay, so that's what Secretary Hegseth said all the way back in February. And this is the national security strategy building on top of that. Let's read.
Huh? Wait, what did he say? He loves that speech, dude. Everybody loves that speech that talks about him. They're like, "Oh, Brian Berletic, you should see in the Pete Hegseth speech February."
Division of labor.
But they lie. But they tell the truth. They lie. But here they're telling the truth. What did he say about the building?
That maximizes our comparative advantages in Europe and Pacific, respectively. Okay, so that's what Secretary Hegseth said all the way back in February. And this is the national security strategy building on top of that. Let's read.
Oh, building on top of that.
The days of the United States propping up the entire world order like Atlas are over. We count among our many allies.
That's good.
partners dozens of wealthy, sophisticated nations that must assume primary responsibility for their regions and contribute far more to our collective defense. And when they say our collective defense, they mean American interests, which the US has imposed on all of these other nations, even if it comes at.
If I were in, and this is what we do. I've done this a number of times before, and this is part of the self-reflection process. As a human, as a person who takes responsibility for themselves. If I were sitting in his shoes and I had his experience in the military, got a bad taste in my mouth, had probably horrible experiences. I can only assume. I don't know what his, childhood was like. And then moving to Thailand and being there for this long. And then just being involved in this writing and in these spheres and looking at this information and all of this stuff and not being in the United States and maybe not even having anybody near in the United States to really understand what people are going through or even what life is like or anything. If I were in his shoes and I carried all of these burdens that he's carrying, I don't think it's unreasonable for him to behave this way and have this perspective and have this animosity and axe to grind. So from his perspective, he probably sees it as a rational response and he feels very defensive. And that's obvious. So I can see that, but that's an inside job. But then there's also like realities that might support that. But then when you're putting out all that information for, people on the internet to see, I mean, his audience isn't like how big is his audience? So he has 300,000 subscribers on YouTube. However many people are viewing it. 54,000 views, is it a drop in the bucket? Like how big of a deal is it actually with his messaging, comparatively? But yeah, so why are we doing this? Why are we looking at this? Yeah, because of all the different various reasons. But I think the point is, when you put yourself in somebody else's shoes, you could see where they're coming from. Does it give them the right to go ahead and have a platform and use it and stand on this, soapbox? I mean, anybody can do whatever they want, obviously. But this is why we look at Richardson too. But everybody's entitled to their own pain and suffering and how they respond to it. So this is his outlet. This is how he expresses himself and feels that he can contribute and add value to the world. And so that's a painful place to be. And it's easy for me or you or anyone to say like get a grip or like, validate and then sort of like recover, or validate and then sort of like move through. But easier said than done. And when you're getting enabled and you're getting positive reinforcements, it's just like Richardson. When you're getting positive comments and you're getting paid to continue and not evolve or expand, then that's sort of a predatory, that you are then how sovereign are you? How autonomous are you then if that is being reinforced through that feedback loop?
At the actual cost of their real interests, not their perceived interests are doing whatever the Americans tell them to do. Their actual interests almost always run contra to what the US wants from them. For example, they're going to talk about how this war in Ukraine has ruined Europe's relationship with Russia, and we have to fix that. Who derailed Europe's relationship with Russia? Before 2014, Europe was working very closely with Russia, both were benefiting. Europe and Russia were both benefiting from it. It was the United States, including under the first Trump administration, that upended all of it. I'll get into that in detail. Let's finish this here first. President Trump has set a new global standard with the Hague Commitment, which pledges NATO countries to spend 5% on GDP on defense, and which our NATO allies have endorsed and now must meet. So we don't want NATO to expand, except we are aggressively expanding NATO. Continuing President Trump's approach of asking allies to assume.
They're saying they're expanding it because of how they're talking about it and making other countries pay into what they were supposed to. Is that happening though? How much money are other countries actually putting into NATO?
Primary responsibility for their regions, and it doesn't mean on behalf of their own interests, it means on behalf of America's interests. The United States will organize a burden sharing network. Remember this term. This is going to be a thing. Burden sharing network.
Burden sharing has been a
the
word.
Quad. This is NATO. This is the U.S. stitching all of it.
This was first Trump administration whenever he was talking about countries paying their fair share. What was it, like 5%? And then in the other Trump document, what was that? The other Trump document where it was like 3.5% because it included or it was 1.5%, and then it included like 1.5% of cyber support or something, right? And that's where you got like the 5% or 3.5% or whatever.
It together into a global burden sharing network. It is taking all of these nations and wringing out of them as much as possible to do as much as possible on the US's behalf to prevent the US itself from being overextended. It literally says that too. With our government as convener, okay, this essentially creating this network, directing it, and also supporter, which is exactly what the US is doing in this proxy war with Russia in Ukraine. It's hiding behind Ukraine and to a certain extent the Europeans. Without US commitments and capabilities, the war just couldn't be fought. It would be over very quickly. But it's hiding in the background while it pushes all of its proxies in front of it, maintaining the illusion of plausible deniability or some sort of degree of separation from itself and the war it is waging on Russia. And that's what it's talking about doing in a global burden sharing network against Russia, China, Iran, and everyone else everywhere else. This approach ensures that burdens are shared and that all such efforts benefit from broader legitimacy. So it's not the US doing this. Look at all these other countries recognizing Juan Guaido as president of Venezuela. I mean, that's all this is. That's all that is. That's what they're talking about. The model will be targeted partnerships that use economic tools to align incentives. So coercing nations through economic threats, share burdens with like-minded allies, and insist on reforms that anchor long-term stability. So you insist on reform.
I'm sorry. Is there like a sound coming from? Is there a cat like howling or something?
Inside these other countries, right after you talked about the primacy of nations. Okay, so again, contradictory. Which one do you think is true? Do you think the U.S. actually wants to recognize the primacy of all nations and not just for itself at the expense of everyone else's sovereignty? Or do you think this is true? Do you think this is true? They're going to continue coercing and imposing on other nations its own interests. This strategic clarity will allow the United States to counter hostile and subversive influences effectively while avoiding the overextension and diffuse focus that undermined past efforts. The U.S. cannot do it alone. It can't do it alone. It needs to confront and contain Russia and China and Iran and all of these other nations investing in multipolarism. It cannot do it on its own. It needs to force its proxies to spend way more, make many times more sacrifices to carry out U.S. foreign policy objectives at the cost of their own interests on behalf.
Okay, there's definitely something howling in the background. We're gonna have to wrap up here because this is 3.5 hours. This is a really long time. I think spending some time here, I feel empathetic for him. I do sense that there is a lot of underlying resentment and anxiety and frustration and feeling out of control and all of that. And I think sometimes we do reckon with, again, do they believe in what they're saying and doing, versus understanding that they're doing narrative in a way, or do they think that they're being like authentic, right? I think Richardson's a little bit less emotional than he is, actually. I can feel the anxiety and the you know, and I feel for that. Like I definitely, we're human and we all experience that, and we all have something to that threads us together, you know, is our human emotions and our humanness and the experiences that we've had that led us to where we are today, and sort of, again, our motivations, right? Like what drives us. And, you know, I probably am guilty of definitely taking things personally in the times we find ourselves in, you know, when you're reading content, and because it's very divisive, things online, and messaging and content and people talking, and there are things that are extremely offensive, and you're like, you know, if we really did walk a day in somebody else's shoes, if we really did spend time thinking about where other people are coming from, that would be the world that we want to live in, right? But the problem is that people use that emotional capacity of humans against us, right? So that's like what happened with COVID, is that like people's, like, that's like what happened to the golden heart liberals, right? And so like that's why it was like, you have to wear a mask to save grandma. You know, do you want people to die? You know, like get the jab, or you want people to die? Like, no, of course not. Like, of course not. Like whatever I have to do, like if I just have to wear a mask, like of course, you know. But then it turned into like, pay more in your gas prices at the pump if it meant saving democracy in Ukraine. And so then it was just like, well, we have to have empathy and save like our, you know, people in our life by masking and jabbing. But now we have to like, you know, sacrifice to save Ukraine and the Ukrainian people against Russia's aggression. And then it's like, but what about Russians? I mean, Russia, it's war. I mean, war is hell. So, I mean, they're both, it's just very new. It's very like, they try and make it black and white. Right. And then we see like what happened in Gaza, and we see just all the devastation and murder there. And, so this just as an example. And then you look in all the different clips of everywhere else. And so then we're just continuously being asked to, like, in the name of, like, we're always being asked then to, because we are empathetic and we do want better for people, and we would do anything to help someone. And we would, you know, oh, if we just have to do this, you know, for this to happen. Right. The problem is that, like, that's used against people, that's used against populations, that nefarious actors are embedded in everywhere, you know, on a local level, on a big level, or whatever, everywhere. And it's not just in the United States, and it's in other countries too. Other countries are not exempt from corruption and nefariousness and evil, obviously. So to isolate the United States in this way, in this sort of weird way, isn't fair. But I definitely understand where that comes from. And if you're living in a different country across, and you're seeing all of the things that are happening in your own backyard, and you feel like the United States is responsible, and you do believe in these things, then you're going to act out. But I still think then have integrity, and don't direct messaging to like Trump supporters, and don't direct messaging to like people who, like, what, you know, wouldn't it be better for you to like craft your message to like show that you have a competency or understanding of where the administration is coming from? Isn't that the diplomacy that you're asking them to do with others? Like, that's what Hegseth was doing in that letter. He was saying, like, it'd be unreasonable to go back to like 2014 Ukrainian territory. It would be unreasonable to think that we can't like come to, terms without Russia or whatever. So that's what it is. It's like, you have to understand that's what negotiation is. Like, you have to understand and you have to prove that you understand the other person's position. You can't just come in with your position. You have to understand, you have to show that you understand where they're coming from. You have to prove that you have to show that you understand their side of the argument, right? And then what they want. Yes, I understand these are all the things that you want. Here's what, and then that's how you sort of do that. So like, why wouldn't you do that with the administration? Why are you presenting it to be this all bad thing for the most part? Like, is it messaging to other countries that you're trying to like present and you're trying to like, so I don't even know who you're talking to. I don't know what audience you're talking to. If you're trying to just like stick it to like people who you think are like holding water for Trump, are you trying to communicate with other governments through your writing and messaging and stuff because you want them to like have a belief about the United States and the Trump administration, because it's more advantageous for them to, not have this extremely negative view about the United States if that's not true. And that's not for you to say. Like, that's for them to decide from their position. So I just think you would get a little bit more efficacy, and resolve for, that's not the right word, resolution for your endeavor if you were to, just be a little bit more reasonable about it and not be so like overtly, all the things that we've already said. You have to show that you understand where the administration is coming from. Like, you have to at least establish, right, that they're not crazy, right? Because that's what you're asking other countries to do. That's what everybody, is everybody promotes Russia as doing that. Everybody promotes China as doing that. Everybody promotes Iran as doing that. So you have to give a little bit of credit for the sake of the whole, because that's just how negotiations work also. So if you're saying that all of this is shit over here, you're not giving credit to these other countries. You're not giving credit to the potentiality or even what's actually currently happening. Because if this was all true and everything was bad, I think the world would look differently. I think the interactions that Trump has had and sort of all the things, I think that would all look different. Like, the fact that it looks the way that it does supports the fact that there is credibility in a document like this, or a perspective or stance on this. So I guess that was my my therapy session for Brian today, and for all of us. We have to, we learn so much about ourselves and our process. This has been a really long show, so I guess I needed to get it out of my system. I guess I needed to get it off my chest, to do all this. So thank you for everybody that hung out with me today. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for hanging in there. I really appreciate it. If you're watching this on the replay, like and subscribe. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I will catch you next time.